from all-round top student to chief scientist. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 101. How did he figure that out? A few moments later, several more people entered. They were Academician Yuan Ya, president of the Chinese Mathematical Society, along with Secretary General Gong Zhou and Deputy Secretary General Chen Fei. These three had been invited by the official Chinese mathematical community, while Lin Xiao and the others were attending in their personal capacity. Academician Yuan Ya walked in, checked everyone's presence, and said, "Everyone's here, right? There's no need to elaborate on the rest. We have 27 people from mainland China this time, so please try to stay in the same hotel. The conference is offering a discounted rate, so it's cheaper. Of course, there are 6 professors who have been invited to give lectures, and also Lin Xiao." At this point, Academician Yuan looked at Lin Xiao and smiled. After Lin Xiao's return from Romania, Academician Yuan had, of course, met and dined with the 6 triumphant mathematical prodigies who had returned, and Lin Xiao was naturally the one he paid the most attention to. In any case, after Lin Xiao published a paper in the Annals of Mathematics and received an invitation to give a talk at the International Congress of Mathematicians, the only differences between him and the others were age and experience. Academician Yuan then turned around and continued, "The ICM is covering all expenses for the presenters, so I won't go into details for now. Our scheduled departure time is set for today's 2 p.m. flight. If you have any questions, please raise them now." Naturally, there were no questions, and they discussed other matters. Once they had mostly resolved the issue, they each went back to prepare, packed their suitcases, and boarded a bus to the airport. The journey from Beijing to Rio de Janeiro takes 30 hours, given that one is in Asia and the other in South America, separated by the Pacific Ocean. Therefore, those 30 hours were quite grueling. 30 hours later, they arrived in Rio de Janeiro. It was 9 a.m., Brazilian time, on July 29th. After disembarking, the airport receptionist escorted them to the bus and took them directly to the hotel. Everyone was exhausted after the long journey, so they settled in for a day of rest. After all, the conference was set to begin on August 1st, leaving them 2 days to go. The next day, July 30th, arrived. As an invited speaker in the field of number theory, Lin Xiao had received notice from the conference organizers that a meeting for number theory speakers would be held, so he headed straight for it. The conference was being held at the Rio Central Convention Center, which would also be the venue for the Mathematicians Congress. Mathematicians Congresses are naturally a gathering place for mathematicians. Although the event hadn't begun yet, the place was already bustling with reporters and media taking photos outside, and a crowd of people gathered outside. Some of them wanted to enter the exhibition hall, but to do so, they had to show their conference badges or work IDs to the staff. Lin Xiao and his group had received these upon arrival, and he was wearing them around his neck. Looking at the crowd, Lin Xiao became curious about their business. He approached and listened. "I proved the Goldbach conjecture." "Let me in." "I proved the twin primes conjecture." "Do you know what you're doing? You're stopping a mathematician." Hearing these voices, Lin Xiao was stunned. Where did all these people come from? Bigwigs? Or, more accurately, amateur scientists? There were those proving the Goldbach conjecture, and then there were those proving twin primes? Even the lectures at this International Congress of Mathematicians probably weren't this outrageous. Perhaps only amateur scientists have such rich imagination? Lin Xiao was speechless, but also admired their spirit. They were so persistent, they'd come all the way to the International Congress of Mathematicians. He glanced around and saw some heavyweights nearby. They even brought posters or blackboards to present their work in the street. The staff ignored them, probably too busy to bother. Lin Xiao couldn't help but feel intrigued, wanting to see how these amateur scientists approached their problems. Glancing over, he noticed someone not far away was presenting the formula for determining Mersenne primality. The problem he had solved was Mersenne primes, and he was curious about how this person had done it. Besides, anyone who could figure out the formula for determining Mersenne primes couldn't be some amateur scientist, right? He thought, since there was still half an hour before the meeting started, he might as well take a stroll. So he walked over and stood in front of the blackboard to examine it. A Brazilian man, the owner of the blackboard, was squatting next to it. Seeing Lin Xiao approach and the badge around his neck indicating he was attending the meeting, his face immediately lit up with enthusiasm. Meeting attendees, of course, knew math, so he stood up and said, "Hello, you know about Mersenne primes, right? Take a look at my formula. I'm sure it's definitely better than the Lucas-Lemmer test. The Lucas-Lemmer test is the current method for finding Mersenne primes, and it's been around for decades. And this guy just said it was better?" Lin Xiao didn't comment, but took a quick look. There was only a short line on the blackboard. Let m be an integer, a prime number, c greater than 0, and c greater than a if 2 of 2, 2c1 equals m. Then 2c1 is a Mersenne prime, Lin Xiao, so this should be a conjecture, right? You haven't proved it yet. If you want to call it a conjecture, then it should be. If it's based on my name, it should be called the Ronald conjecture. Hearing Lin Xiao's words, he was very excited, as if he had found a way to make himself famous for generations. But soon he said, "Of course, although it is a conjecture, we can now assume that it is true. Then, using this method, we can also accurately find Mersenne primes." As he spoke, he found a blackboard pen and began to write on the blackboard. "Look, now we can set a equals 7 and c equals 19. Both 7 and 19 are prime numbers, right? Then, substituting them into the equation, the numerator is divisible by the denominator, so when the exponent is 19, m19 is a Mersenne prime. Let's take another example. For example, if a equals 3 and c equals 13, they still hold, and m13 is also a Mersenne prime. Or, for example, if a equals 5 and c equals 31, or a equals 13 and c equals 61, we can see that it's all possible. This Brazilian, presumably named Ronald, listed 7 sets of numbers, all of which came true. At this moment, some people nearby, drawn to the discussion, had also arrived, and were amazed by Ronald's demonstration. It seemed like something. It actually worked. But just then, after examining the equation, Lin Xiao suddenly said, "Try a equals 29 and c equals 67. Ronald was taken aback by Lin Xiao's words, and fetched a calculator nearby to try it out. The result left everyone speechless. When the two values Lin Xiao mentioned were substituted in, the original formula surprisingly also found divisibility, but it didn't yield a Mersenne prime. Everyone around couldn't help but stare at Lin Xiao in shock. How did he figure that out? Please vote for this new book. Monthly votes are important. Please get me into the top 10 of the monthly vote list. Chapter 102, see it directly. For any conjecture, the mere presence of a counterexample like this proves it's invalid. Its previous validity was merely a mathematical fluke. Without rigorous proof, the validity of any proposition is merely coincidental. Just like the Riemann hypothesis, people have found trillions of points confirming its validity, but they continue to search for more, because just one counterexample can prove its falsity. Therefore, Lin Xiao's counterexample directly disproved the Ronald conjecture, which had only been around for less than 10 minutes. The name of this conjecture is currently known only to two people, its proponent and its disprover. Ronald was inconsolable. He had discovered this formula a few days ago, and after trying dozens of numbers and finding success, he became convinced and came here hoping to make a splash, only to find himself in vain. The onlookers laughed. They had thought they were about to witness a new mathematical achievement, but it turned out to be a complete misunderstanding. Ronald, perhaps still feeling a bit emotional, couldn't help but ask the question everyone wanted to know: how did you figure it out? Lin Xiao spread his hands. I just saw it. First, I knew that when c equals 67, 2-67-1 definitely wasn't a Mersenne prime. Then, I just added it to make it equal to 29. He'd studied Mersenne primes for so long that he'd practically memorized the first 20 or 30. Naturally, he knew that when c equals 67, it wouldn't hold. But people still found it a bit baffling. But how did you know that setting a equals 29 would make them divisible? Lin Xiao shrugged. I guess I just felt it, right? He saw it at first glance. It all came from his number sense. With his brain development reaching 3.4% and his math proficiency reaching level 3, his number sense had been further enhanced. Accomplishing something that seemed unbelievable to others was actually effortless. Everyone around him was once again in disbelief when Lin Xiao said this. Just felt it out? What kind of genius was this? Looking at this young man from China, they were all a little incredulous. He looked no more than 20, right? Meanwhile, Ronald was already preparing to leave, dragging a small blackboard. He had arrived by car, and his car was nearby. Ronald glanced at Lin Xiao's name tag again. Lin Xiao's movements had flipped it over, revealing the detailed information. Ronald was stunned. "You're the presenter." Lin Xiao caught his gaze and glanced down. The initials speaker were clearly visible on his name tag, distinguishing him from the average attendee. He nodded and smiled. "Yes, I'm planning to give a presentation on Mersenne primes. If you're interested, you can come and see it." The people around him were even more astonished. If they had already admired Lin Xiao's previous display of ability, learning that he had even been invited to give a presentation at the International Congress of Mathematicians was a truly unbelievable experience. To be so young, yet to be able to present at such a prestigious conference, simply left them speechless. And no wonder, he had spotted the counterexample to the formula at a glance. Ronald felt even more embarrassed when he heard Lin Xiao's words. Was this a case of a fake meeting a real one? He was only half-baked. Forget about being able to understand the presentations, even getting into the exhibition hall was a question. After all, he didn't have the conference badge hanging around Lin Xiao's neck. So he waved his hand. "Thank you, I won't need it." Then, he ran off, clutching the blackboard. Lin Xiao felt helpless. Was he really running so fast? Slow down. Bang! He had just thought to himself when Ronald's blackboard toppled to the ground due to the uneven ground. Lin Xiao shook his head. "Forget it, let's not wander around anymore. Let's get ready to enter the venue." But just then, a voice called from the side, "Excuse me, Mr. Lin Xiao." Lin Xiao was startled. Turning to look, he saw an elderly man in a suit approaching and calling out. Lin Xiao's eyes lit up upon seeing him. "Professor Pompili? Haha, we meet again." Pompili approached. He had worn casual clothes at the last demo, but now, in a suit, he exuded the authority of a professor. While he looked rather imposing, he was much more approachable with a smile on his face. "What are you doing?" "I was just looking at a formula for determining Mersenne primes created by that gentleman." Hearing Lin Xiao's words, Professor Pompili couldn't help but laugh. "Didn't you figure out the distribution law of Mersenne primes? Why do you still need to look at other people's?" "I just wanted to take a look," Lin Xiao was about to explain, and suddenly realized, "Huh? You also know that I figured it out." "Haha, because of a coincidence, I know." Professor Pompili smiled and told Lin Xiao that Professor Sanek and Professor Deline had come to him together before, and then said, You solved this problem, but you didn't even send me a separate email to tell me." Lin Xiao scratched his head embarrassedly. "Sorry, Professor, I was too busy with emo matters at the time, so I forgot about it later." "Haha, it's okay, at least it's a surprise for me." Professor Pompili waved his hand to show that he didn't care, and then said, "Are you going to attend the group reporter meeting?" "I happen to be going to another meeting as well." "Yes," Lin Xiao nodded, then checked the time and was suddenly startled. My meeting starts in about 10 minutes. He hadn't realized he'd been standing there for over 10 minutes. Professor Pompili smiled and said, "Don't worry, it's still about 10 minutes. Let's go now." Lin Xiao nodded and started to walk with Pompili. Suddenly, someone asked Pompili, "Excuse me, are you Professor Enrique Pompili from the IS?" Pompili smiled and nodded. "Yes, I am." "Nice to meet you," the man exclaimed excitedly. "This is a Fields Medal winner." "I'm happy too," Pompili replied politely. Without stopping, he and Lin Xiao left. The others watched the old and young walk away, each feeling envious of Lin Xiao. Perhaps only a young genius like him could have such a chance to interact with a Fields Medal winner like this. Monthly votes, please. Monthly votes are important. Thanks to Wuma feeding sheep and once flowing wind for their 1,500 starting coins. Thanks to Over the Hills, but no one waiting and 20180212104618886 for their 500 starting coins. Thanks to Spicy Shop and Beyond the Fantasy for their 100 starting coins. Chapter 103 1 Hour Report. Lin Xiao and Pompili walked into the convention center together, and the staff naturally did not stop them. Soon, they arrived at the place where they parted. Pompili patted Lin Xiao on the shoulder and said, "Then I'll look forward to the day of your report. I will be there on time." "Okay, I'll wait for your arrival too." Lin Xiao nodded and smiled. "Anyway, thank you very much for the manuscripts you gave me. Without those manuscripts, I would not have been able to produce such results, but it was you who made those manuscripts valuable. Otherwise, They would have to stay in my bookcase until the day they decayed. I don't have the means to preserve them. Papyri smiled and said, when the conference is over, I will burn your Fibonacci sequence paper and your Mersenne prime paper to Selberg, Tisk. Burning the Fibonacci sequence paper is to tell him that my theory is correct, and burning the Mersenne prime paper tells him that his theory is correct. Hey, if that old guy knew in heaven, he would probably be happy. The old professor shook his head with a smile on his face, probably because he was happy for his deceased friend. He patted Lin Xiao's shoulder and said, then let's go. Goodbye. Lin Xiao nodded. Goodbye. He then walked towards the conference room. They soon arrived. There were more than a dozen people inside. There were 13 people giving presentations in the field of number theory, so there were also several staff members. One of the staff members saw him walk in and, seeing how young he was, thought he had come to the wrong place. They said, Sir, a meeting is about to start here. Did you come to the wrong place? Lin Xiao said, I'm Lin Xiao, and I'm here for the meeting, too. The staff member was startled, then remembered that there was indeed a presenter named Lin Xiao. He looked down at Lin Xiao's name tag again, confirmed his identity, and felt awkward. He quickly made way and said, come in. Seeing Lin Xiao enter, the staff member was secretly surprised. Isn't he too young? 20? Especially since Chinese people don't tend to mature as precociously as foreigners do. Lin Xiao still looked like a teenager. As Lin Xiao entered the conference room, many professors turned to look at him. This speaker is a bit too young. Just then, one of the speakers suddenly waved at Lin Xiao, in Chinese. Startled, Lin Xiao turned to look. He saw a man of Chinese descent, looking rather thin. He stepped forward and asked, who are you, Chen Wei? The man replied with a smile. Lin Xiao thought for a moment, then remembered that Professor Chen Wei, a professor in the Department of Mathematics at MIT, was also Chinese. When he had come here before, he had heard that this Chinese mathematician in the United States had also been invited to give a presentation at the conference. He hadn't expected them to be in the same field of number theory. As for why the other person didn't return to China but stayed in the United States, Lin Xiao didn't comment. He couldn't bring it up in front of them. Everyone has their own aspirations. At least, Chen Wei's nationality was still Chinese, not American. I've heard of you for a long time. We have a genius in our country, Chen Wei said with a smile. Lin Xiao smiled. It's not genius, it's just hard work. Edison said it, genius is 99% perspiration and 1% talent. Chen Wei shook his head. That being said, we all know the importance of talent. Although Edison's original words didn't include the popular online misrepresentation of 1% talent is more important, it's clear that everyone in the scientific community understands the importance of talent. Never mind, let's not talk about that. When will you give your presentation? I can't find your name on the official website. My name isn't on the list. Lin Xiao was stunned. According to the email they sent me, they scheduled me for August 2nd. Seeing that Lin Xiao didn't understand what was going on, Chen Wei said, let's wait until the meeting. They might have an explanation. Lin Xiao temporarily put aside his doubts and stopped asking. At this moment, a man walked in. Seeing the people sitting inside, he came to the front and said with a smile, Dear presenters, hello. I'm Emmanuel Carnero, responsible for the academic conference arrangements. I'm sorry to have kept you waiting. I've called you all here today primarily to answer your questions and to discuss our arrangements, but before that, may I ask if Mr. Lin Xiao is here? Lin Xiao raised his hand. I'm here, Mr. Lin. It's a pleasure to meet you. Due to the unique nature of your presentation, following consultations between the organizing committee and several members of the International Mathematical Union, we've decided to schedule a separate one-hour meeting just for you. This will give you more time to present your paper, Emmanuel Carnero said to Lin Xiao with a smile. The others were stunned by his words. What? A one-hour presentation? Upgraded from a 45-minute presentation to a one-hour presentation? Did this Lin Xiao have a VIP card? Before Emmanuel Carnero finished, he continued, of course, as you know, the other one-hour talks are already booked, so your talk can only be scheduled between 7:30 and 8:30 p.m. on August 3rd, half an hour after the another lecture. If there's a conflict with your schedule, please request it and we'll try to change it. Of course, it will be held in Hall 3, the same venue as the plenary talks, to ensure that all participants can participate. The other presenters were even more incredulous. Not only was it upgraded to a 1-hour talk, but it was even scheduled for Hall 3. Although the time was slightly different, it was completely the same as any other 1-hour talk. A 1-hour talk. A 1-hour talk is also a plenary talk at the International Congress of Mathematicians. As the name suggests, it's a report given in front of all participants, with no other activities taking place at the same time. For a 45-minute report, there are a maximum of 5 lectures starting at the same time, divided into 19 areas of mathematics. In addition, the lectures are held in the small conference room of Hall 5, which is far less spacious than Hall 3. This is enough to show the importance of the 1-hour report. Chapter 104. A true master always maintains the heart of an apprentice. Furthermore, each Congress typically only schedules 21 speakers, and since the Congress is held every 4 years, the average number of speakers is only 5 or 6 per year. Therefore, a 1-hour presentation is a tremendous honor for every mathematician. Just look at how many Chinese mathematicians receive such an invitation. At most, there are only 7, and only one of them, Mr. Peng Shiji, works full-time in mainland China. While Lin Xiao's 1-hour presentation differs from a typical invited presentation, the format is identical. Looking at his youthful face, these mathematicians, the youngest of whom are in their 30s, are filled with envy and jealousy. Lin Xiao was also surprised. He hadn't expected such adjustments to his presentation. He felt a bit flattered. Originally a 45-minute presentation, he had been prepared to shorten it, perhaps by simplifying some steps. However, now that it had been extended this much, he had more time. He smiled and said, "I have no further requests. That's all. Thank you to the organizing committee and the International Mathematical Union for arranging this. Thank you for your understanding." Emmanuel Carnero nodded, then looked at the other presenters, who still had a look of "I'm not sisterly" on their faces. Emmanuel Carnero smiled and explained, "The other presenters may be confused about why Mr. Lin Xiao's presentation was scheduled. It's actually because Mr. Lin Xiao's presentation solves a well-known problem in our mathematical community, the distribution of Mersenne primes." Upon hearing Emmanuel Carnero's explanation, the presenters, who had originally looked confused, suddenly became stunned. The distribution of Mersenne primes? Could this problem really be solved? The manuscript has been approved by Professors Peter Sarnak, Pierre Delaine, and Enrique Pompiri, a total of 5 professors. Coincidentally, I also do research in number theory, so I must admit that this is clearly an extremely important achievement for the mathematical community. If you presenters are interested, I recommend you take a look. Oh, and by the way, we've uploaded Mr. Lin Xiao's presentation to our official website. It's now available for download under the special lectures section for everyone to view. The presenter's expressions shifted from astonishment to disbelief. Even so many renowned mathematics professors recognized this achievement? They couldn't help but look at Lin Xiao, at his youthful face. Normally, a young man of his age would be brimming with pride if he achieved such an accomplishment, but they saw nothing on Lin Xiao's face. He even smiled politely, his attitude humble and without a trace of complacency. They couldn't help but admire him. A true master always maintains the heart of a student. Lin Xiao might not be considered a master yet, but if he could maintain this attitude, his name would surely one day be engraved on the pyramid of mathematics, admired by all who would follow. And only someone so young and yet so humble could achieve such an accomplishment would earn their sincere admiration. "I'll take a look when I get back," a professor said immediately, giving Lin Xiao a thumbs up. The other presenters nodded in agreement. Some even wanted to ask if Lin Xiao was currently an undergraduate or graduate student, or if he had already graduated. If he was an undergraduate, they wanted to ask if he would become their graduate student after he finished. But then they realized that their small room probably couldn't accommodate a student of Lin Xiao's caliber. Someone who could teach Lin Xiao would have to be at least a Fields medalist. And they would have to be exceptionally accomplished, someone who had continued to produce results even after receiving the award. Otherwise, they wouldn't know what to teach Lin Xiao. Emmanuel Carnero, observing the speaker's reactions, also felt a surge of emotion. Technically, the speakers present all held higher status in the mathematical community than he did. He had only been invited here because of his status as host. When he read Lin Xiao's paper once, he found himself unable to fully grasp it. He had to reread it several times before he could fully grasp it. Alice, it truly was difficult for him to comprehend the brains of these mathematical geniuses. It was as if they were imbued with an alien intelligence. Shaking his head slightly, He stopped dwelling on it and continued with the conference announcements. Time passed quickly, and the meeting ended after about 20 minutes. However, despite the meeting's conclusion, the 13 speakers weren't in a rush to leave. Instead, they engaged in conversation and getting to know each other. Mathematician congresses serve this very purpose. Beyond academic exchange, they are also a place for mathematicians to meet new people and catch up with old friends from all corners of the world. Especially since everyone is studying number theory, there's plenty of topics to discuss. Naturally, Lin Xiao became the person they all clamored to meet. After all, in their eyes, Lin Xiao had become a promising rising star in mathematics. If they could befriend him, wouldn't they have a friend they could brag about if he became a big star in the future? Otherwise, why do so many people like to say I have a friend when chatting? Lin Xiao naturally got to know these professors. They even asked him what his Facebook or Twitter account was, but he didn't have any, so he could only leave his email address as contact information. After a brief conversation, they checked the time and saw it was getting late, so they said their goodbyes and left. However, after Lin Xiao left the conference room, the staff member who had stopped him suddenly called out to him, "Mr. Lin Xiao." Lin Xiao was startled and turned around to look. "Excuse me," the staff member said, "Professor Carnero asked me to tell you that you don't need to worry about whether other participants will not know about your report due to temporary arrangements. Please rest assured that we will notify all participants of this information to ensure that every participant can know about it. Please give me a monthly ticket." SYNOPSIS. TT. Chapter 105, Challenge to the Peak of Wisdom. "I see. Thank you." Upon hearing this, Lin Xiao mentally expressed his appreciation for their arrangements. When Chen Wei informed him that the conference hadn't posted details of his presentation on the official website, he hadn't said anything, but he had complained internally. "It's what we should do," the staff member said with a smile. Lin Xiao nodded, saying nothing more. He turned and left. As the staff member watched him from behind, he couldn't help but think of how he had stopped Lin Xiao earlier. He had stopped a prominent figure, equivalent to a one-hour speaker. Fortunately, nothing unexpected had happened. The next moment was spent patiently awaiting the official start of the conference. On August 1st, the opening ceremony of the International Congress of Mathematicians officially began. At 9 a.m., all participants were seated. Professor Marcelo Viana, chairman of the organizing committee, opened the meeting with a welcome speech. Then, Shigefumi Mori, president of the International Mathematical Union and Fields Medalist, gave his address. After the speeches, the conference entered its climax, the 5 major awards of the International Congress of Mathematicians. The first 3 awards were the Gauss Medal, the Chern Medal, and the Relativity Medal. The fourth, the Fields Medal, was the most anticipated. As each name was announced, the audience erupted in applause. The winner who garnered the most attention was Peter Schultz. At only 30 years old, he stood out among the majority of Fields medalists, who were over 36. He was also the mathematician most favored to receive the Fields Medal before the conference, making him a true genius in mathematics. After the Fields Medal awards were announced, the conference continued with other events, finally concluding after 11 p.m. However, during this time, something truly amusing occurred. A Fields medalist's medal was stolen. The medal had been placed in his briefcase, but the briefcase survived, while the medal inside was. This incident amused everyone, yet also evoked sympathy for the unfortunate recipient. The medal had barely warmed up for half an hour, and in the blink of an eye, it was gone. The conference organizers took this matter very seriously and immediately contacted the police, but it seems unlikely to be recovered for a while. As for Professor Viana, upon learning of the incident, he rushed to address it. He hated these kinds of accidents, so why did they always happen? However, this was just a minor incident. If the medal is not found, the conference will issue a new one to the laureate later. With the opening ceremony concluded, the main event of the International Congress of Mathematicians began. Reports and lectures were aplenty. On August 2nd alone, there were over 40 reports and lectures, 34 of which were 45-minute long. Originally, Lin Xiao's report was scheduled to be among these 34, but it clearly attracted less attention than the hour-long presentations. August 3rd also featured many reports, but attendees didn't attend every one, including the plenary sessions. If the topic wasn't within their field of interest or research, it generally wouldn't attract much attention. However, after the their lecture concluded at 7 p.m., almost all the mathematicians, whether those resting in the hotel or attending the lecture, began to head to Hall 3 of the Rio Central Convention Center. A special lecture was about to begin there, focusing on the precise prediction of the distribution of Mersenne primes. When they all received emails from the organizing committee a few days ago, they were somewhat surprised. Such a sudden, one-hour lecture was unusual, and indeed, it had never happened at previous conferences. The email also mentioned that the lecture, originally scheduled for 45 minutes, had been shortened to an hour, making it even rarer. However, when they read the topic of the lecture, they all understood the organizing committee's reasoning. Such an important achievement truly deserved the special treatment of a one-hour lecture, which would truly reflect its status as a monument in the mathematical world. The study of Mersenne primes is a widespread topic in the mathematical community. Prime numbers, a love-hate relationship among mathematicians, intrigue every mathematician with their mysteries. What's the point of studying prime numbers? Many people might ask themselves. Studying these numbers doesn't feed people, nor does it have any real impact on daily life. Furthermore, Euclid proved in his Elements that there are infinite prime numbers, so what's the point of studying something infinite? Perhaps the most relevant connection is to RSA cryptography, which exploits the difficulty of factoring large numbers. For example, take a 6-digit prime number and multiply it by an 8-digit prime number to get a product, which is obviously a large number. This large number is then used as a password, and verification is only possible if the two prime factors are entered. Obviously, factoring the large number into these two prime factors is difficult for others. But for mathematicians, studying prime numbers isn't about developing RSA cryptography, but about challenging the pinnacle of human intelligence. The prime numbers lay there, like maidens deliberately teasing the mathematicians, flirting with alluring gestures, beckoning them, "Come on, have fun." But when the mathematicians tried to touch them, they would step back and hold out pieces of paper with inscriptions like Goldbach's conjecture, Polignac's conjecture, and Riemann's hypothesis, forcing the mathematicians to give up, ultimately leaving them to admire from afar. Only by successfully challenging these problems could they enjoy the fruits of victory. This, in turn, proved to mathematics, to the universe, and even to the ethereal creator, that human wisdom would constantly achieve breakthroughs and eventually reach the truth. And now, the young man named Lin Xiao announced to them all that he had solved the problem of one of these maidens, titled the distribution of Mersenne primes. However, to enjoy this maid, he needed everyone's approval. So, they had come to witness with their own eyes whether human wisdom had truly reached such a breakthrough in the pyramid of prime numbers. Yu Yan and others, please give me monthly tickets. TT. Chapter 106. The report begins. I will personally put an end to it. Rio Central Convention Center, Hall 3. Hall 3 can accommodate 9,000 people, clearly more than enough for the more than 3,000 attendees of this International Congress of Mathematicians. That evening, Hall 3 once again welcomed over 2,000 people, awaiting the 7:30 p.m. So many people. I haven't seen this many people at other presentations before. The Chinese team, currently seated in a row in the middle, a dozen or so Chinese students marveled at the scene. Another student sighed. Is the topic of Lin Xiao's presentation so captivating? Who knows? Sigh. I think I'll fall asleep again. Just coming here is just torture. Several students echoed this sentiment. Those who dared to sign up for the International Congress of Mathematicians had excellent academic records. Many undergraduates had published in C journals, and the graduate students were even better, having published at least one in a core C journal. Furthermore, their English skills were excellent, with most achieving an IELTS score of 7.5, making them easy to converse with foreigners. However, upon arriving here, they discovered that all their previously proud achievements had been completely rubbish. Every time they attended a lecture, they entered with anticipation, only to leave bewildered. Just look at this afternoon's Fields Medalist lecture. After the first 5 minutes, some were already falling asleep, reminiscent of their middle school days. Haha, today's lecture is about prime number problems. You should all be familiar with them, right? You can just wait and see what your junior Lin Xiao does. At this moment, Academician Yuan Ya, president of the Chinese Mathematical Society, sitting next to them, said to them with a smile. Junior? We wouldn't dare, Academician Yuan. The students quickly waved their hands away. The names of gods are not something we mortals can address directly, let alone our junior students. Hearing their words, Yuan Ya smiled and looked back toward the podium. He wondered what surprises this lecture would bring to the mathematical community. Just then, a figure stepped onto the podium. It was the presenter. "Everyone, please be quiet. The lecture is about to begin." After the conference room gradually quieted, the presenter said, "Thank you all for taking the time to attend this meeting. Now, let us invite Mr. Lin Xiao to reveal the secrets of Mersenne primes." He then led a round of applause, and the audience of over 2,000 people followed suit. Backstage, Lin Xiao, dressed in a black suit, tugged at his tie. It was his first time wearing a suit, and he felt a little uncomfortable. "Mr. Lin, you may proceed," the staff member said. Lin Xiao nodded, finally taking off his tie and setting it aside. It was best to make himself comfortable. Then, he glanced back at the audience. With over 2,000 attendees, the crowds were truly impressive. Giving his first academic presentation at such a significant conference was undoubtedly a challenge. However, his 3.4% brain development allowed him to quickly control his emotions. Nervousness stems from the mind, but when one's mind is strong enough, overcoming it becomes a simple matter. He took a deep breath and slowly walked onto the stage. His appearance caused an uproar in the audience. They had heard that Lin Xiao was young, but they hadn't expected him to be so excessively so. But before they had time to be surprised, Lin Xiao spoke. "I'm Lin Xiao, the presenter, from China. I'm honored to receive the invitation from the International Mathematical Union to give this presentation. I'd also like to thank the organizing committee for arranging this time to share my findings. Well, my presentation will begin now." Then, his PowerPoint presentation appeared on the large screen behind him. The first page was the title: "A New Group Transformation Method and the Determination of the Distribution of Mersenne Primes." Seeing this title, everyone in the audience focused, anticipating what would happen next. Was this problem truly going to be solved? A Mersenne number is an integer of the form 2p1. If it's prime, it's called a Mersenne prime. And how are Mersenne primes distributed among Mersenne numbers? This question has been studied since Euclid over 2,000 years ago and continues to this day. And today, I will personally put an end to this problem. Lin Xiao's tone was calm, yet it gave everyone a sense of high spirits. When he spoke of putting an end to this world's difficult problem, even the calmest words had the feeling. Everyone in the audience sighed with emotion and opened their papers, quietly awaiting Lin Xiao's explanation. And Lin Xiao didn't keep them waiting. "In January of this year, I solved a problem, whether there are infinite prime numbers in the Fibonacci sequence. So, the first part of my report is a summary of the methods I used to solve this problem. Well, let's start with a kth-order homogeneous linear recursion formula, n plus k, plus c1, n plus k1. For this form, we can make the following transformations. Let n equals n1, and k plus 1, equals x1 and 1 plus x2 and 2 plus xk and k. As Lin Xiao explained, the content gradually progressed into deeper depths. The early parts were not difficult, so most people in the room were able to follow, including some students from various countries who had just joined in the fun. However, as the content progressed, some began to lose track. Among the dozen or so Chinese students, one girl glanced blankly at the PowerPoint presentation on the stage. She realized that apart from taking a photo of each slide, she didn't understand a single thing Lin Xiao was talking about. Then she turned her head and looked at the other girl next to her. She seemed to be listening with great interest. Could it be that she understood? She couldn't help but poke the girl and whispered, "Did you understand?" She was surprised to find that after she poked the girl fell down and leaned back on the seat. The girl looked and saw that she had her eyes closed. Speechless for a moment, she turned her head and looked at the others. Except for the senior graduate students who were still trying hard to listen, everyone else had basically given up. In the end, she could only sigh and gave up struggling as well. "Let's just play with the phone. Yanzu, Shinal, Yu Yan, please ask for monthly tickets. The new book is on the shelves and monthly tickets are very important. ET. Chapter 107. Applause from the audience. Elsewhere, Yuanyer was chatting with Su Chen. "You've read his paper, too, right?" Yuanyer asked. "Yes," Su Chen nodded. "Young people are truly formidable," Yuanyer sighed. Su Chen smiled. "I'm a junior to you, and Lin Xiao is a junior to me, so you should say junior." "Oh? Why, I'm not formidable." Yuanyer was stunned, then shook his head with a laugh. "You're quite humorous." He looked back at Lin Xiao on the stage and said, "Once he graduates with his doctorate, I'll have to write him a letter of recommendation." "What letter of recommendation?" "I've written everything I can. 10,000 talents, young thousand talents, and so on. Oh, if his work is truly successful, he should be eligible for a natural science award, right? Besides, we're having our Chinese mathematics conference next year, so he shouldn't have any problem getting the Morningside Prize. Su Chen was stunned for a moment, then nodded. That's true, he couldn't help but sigh. From this perspective, Lin Xiao is even more amazing than me. The Morningside Prize is an award from the World Congress of Chinese Mathematicians, specifically given to Chinese mathematicians. It's even been called the Chinese Fields Medal. Su Chen, however, had never won either of these awards. In China, he only holds the title of Yangtze River Scholar. A few rows ahead in the auditorium, Professors Pompiri, Deline, and Sanek sat together, also whispering. That's quite remarkable, Sanek exclaimed, looking at the formulas on Lin Xiao's PowerPoint presentation. Although he had seen them before, he couldn't help but exclaim in amazement. Of course, I can already imagine the expressions on those other old guys' faces after hearing the presentation, Pompiri said with a smile. I'll have to show them off later that Lin Xiao benefited from my help. Okay, that's Selberg, Deline interrupted. Sorry, I've already seen it, so if you listen to it, you probably won't be able to imagine my expression. At that moment, an old man poked his head out from behind their seats. The three professors turned to look, laughing and cursing in unison. Andrew, you old man are here too? Of course I have to come. After all, I won a Fields Medal. That's a Fields Medal, not a Fields Medal. That's pretty much the same. There are at least over 50 Fields medalists, but only one Fields medalist, the old professor said with a chuckle, seemingly quite casual. In reality, his name was Andrew Wiles, the prover of Fermat's last theorem. After his proof of Fermat's last theorem was recognized by the mathematical community, the International Mathematical Union awarded him a Fields Medal. Although he was already 45 years old at the time, exceeding the Fields Medal's eligibility limit, his achievement in solving Fermat's last theorem was so significant to the mathematical community that an exception was made. He was also a mathematician who loved to stir things up. His first proof of Fermat's last theorem was delivered in a dramatic fashion. He scheduled 3 lectures, with no titles announced in advance. But when people realized his ultimate goal was to prove Fermat's last theorem, the 3rd lecture hall was packed. Though, you really should have come to this lecture, Deline said with a smile. Do you see any similarities with your original proof? Of course, Wiles nodded. His use of modular forms inspired me. If I were to prove Fermat's last theorem again, I'm sure it wouldn't be a second time, because I've come up with a very clever way to prove the Taniyama-Shamir conjecture. The other professors shook their heads. Then, Professor Pompiri suddenly said, we've reached the key point. Hearing his words, they looked up at Lin Xiao on the stage. Lin Xiao had reached a crucial point, the key to his success. Next, we construct an auxiliary function. Let L be a sufficiently large even number. Let FC equals LK equals 1, LL equals 1, OCL, CK, then continue constructing a non-zero algebraic number. Let S0 equals mins Sn. After that, we can see that we have successfully formalized the group G module. As Lin Xiao explained, the bewildered crowd could only exclaim inwardly, awesome, while the math experts in the front row couldn't help but admire the result. Reaching this point confirmed to everyone that success was inevitable. Of the more than 70 pages of the paper, these few steps were the most essential, the core steps that served as the backbone of the entire paper, truly connecting the seemingly unrelated sections. Andrew, how's it going? Does this step sound familiar to you? Deline, seated in the lower seats, turned his head, glanced at Wiles behind him, and quipped. Wiles nodded, then smiled and said, but I won't let him off so easily. Oh? You want to give him a hard time? Deline was stunned. Did you see a problem? Where is it? Wiles smiled and shook his head. I happen to have encountered this problem before. Where's it? You'll know after his presentation. Seeing that Wiles was still keeping him in suspense, Deline shook his head, turned back, and flipped through the paper again. He wanted to know what problem Wiles had seen that he hadn't noticed when he read the paper before. However, he searched for it briefly, but ultimately gave up. He didn't have enough time to find it. He could only wait for Wiles to reveal it during the Q&A session after the presentation. Of course, this also shows the importance of an academic presentation. The more people read a paper, the greater the chance of discovering even minor errors and omissions. This is essential for any significant achievement. Only after it has passed the scrutiny of more people can it be considered a true success. Time passed quickly. Once Lin Xiao successfully identified the most crucial step, the rest of the process seemed to flow with unstoppable force. He sped up his pace, and by the 40th minute, he had finally completed his entire theoretical presentation. With this, we've successfully implemented homomorphic transformations on group G. My group transformation method is complete. Please allow me to name it, Lin Xiao said shyly. As you can see, it's a homomorphic group transformation, so I'll call it Lin's group transformation method. Everyone in the audience couldn't help but laugh. There's nothing to be embarrassed about naming your own theory. Of course, you could have chosen something longer, like Lin's homomorphism group module formal transformation method, but that would have been a bit long. This was just a brief interlude. Now it was time to draw the final conclusion. After formulating the Mersenne numbers, Lin Xiao finally derived the distribution of Mersenne primes, successfully proving the infinity of Mersenne primes and, incidentally, reaffirming Zhou's conjecture. Thus concluded the presentation of the paper. Everyone in the audience clapped their hands in unison. This young man deserved their applause. Please give me a monthly ticket. Monthly tickets are very important for the new book. Thank you to Zheng Yifeng and On Sleeping God for their 1,500 starting coins. Thank you to Bieda for your 200 starting coins. And thank you to Yazhi Wu for your 100 starting coins. Chapter 108, A Fatal Question. Awesome, awesome, Sri Lanka, Surrey. The applause was mingled with the audience's praise. On the Chinese side, a dozen students, though they couldn't understand, still shouted, Big brother, awesome. A mathematics PhD student from Modern University clapped his hands and asked his professor, did he prove it? Bay silly. I think so. The professor clapped as well, but with a wry smile on his face. He studied topology and hadn't done much with number theory, so by the time he got to the later parts, he was already confused. He was too embarrassed to tell his students he didn't understand, but everyone was applauding anyway. Hadn't the experts in the front row also been applauding? Professor Yuanya, not far away, also clapped. He did understand, but that was because he had read Lin Xiao's paper beforehand. If he had read it right then and there, he probably wouldn't have been able to follow. Guess I can write the recommendation letter after we get back to the hotel. Su Chen, who was standing next to him, nodded. He had previously considered this young man an equal, but now, it seemed, he was completely convinced. Such immense talent made it easy to sense the huge gap between them. Lin Xiao, on the stage, smiled until the applause died down. Then he said, now, if anyone has questions, you can ask now. Soon, someone raised their hand. It was a young man who looked to be in his 20s or 30s. Hello, Professor Lin. I'd like to ask, on page 34, line 3, why is J a modular form with zero weight? Lin Xiao waved his hand with a smile. I'm not a professor or a doctorate yet. Just call me Mr. Lin. He then flipped open his paper, took a look, and explained, J is invariant under the complete modular group SL2, Z, meaning J plus B, comma, plus D, equals J. So we can draw this conclusion. The questioner pondered for a moment, then suddenly understood. I see, he thanked. Thank you, Professor Lin. Ah, Mr. Lin. Lin Xiao smiled at him, then looked at the others and said, next. Soon, more hands raised their own questions, and Lin Xiao answered them one by one. He had, of course, read his paper many times and had already guessed what questions they might have, so answering them was easy. After answering about 5 questions, no one else raised their hands. He politely asked again, any questions? Just then, he saw an elderly man in the third row raise his hand. Lin Xiao turned to look at the man, gave him a faint smile, and waited for the staff to pass the microphone to him. However, he felt that when the man raised his hand, everyone in the room fell silent. Many eyes turned to him, and some seemed to be talking. He looked again and saw that the person sitting in front of him was Professor Pompili. He seemed like a big shot. Just then, the man also took the microphone and said with a smile, hello, future Professor Lin. Everyone in the room couldn't help but laugh. Just when Lin Xiao had said he wasn't a professor, the man mentioned future Professor Lin. There was a certain playfulness in his words, but more importantly, it was a sign of his goodwill towards Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so he simply accepted the title and said, hello, current professor. He didn't know who the man was, so he just called him professor. He knew he was a professor at first glance. The old professor smiled. Haha, your report is excellent. It reminds me of how I proved that all elliptic curves can be represented by modular parameters in my proof of Fermat's last theorem. The room erupted in excitement. Those who, like Lin Xiao, hadn't recognized the old professor, realized his identity. Proving Fermat's last theorem? Wasn't that Andrew Wiles? Everyone couldn't help but gasp in surprise. Professor Wiles actually thought there was a problem with Lin Xiao's theory? This piqued everyone's attention. The people who had asked the questions weren't renowned academics, and most of them were relatively young. Their questions were likely due to a misunderstanding of a certain part of the report. And for a true expert like this to have a problem could be fatal to the entire argument. They all felt a pang of sweat on Lin Xiao's face. At this point, Andrew Wiles finally asked his own question. However, a question I've considered before has now appeared in your report in a different form, so I'd like to ask how you would solve it. My question is on page 41, line 10. Everyone was stunned. Page 41? Isn't that the core of the entire report? Everyone quickly flipped to page 41 and found line 10. At this point, Wiles finally asked his own question. Have you considered that CLM, cap 1/2 is less than, S0? How should your inequality, 12, hold? Hearing Wiles' question, everyone quickly looked in the direction Wiles was referring. After a moment's thought, those who understood the question couldn't help but gasp. Of course, only a small number of people saw the problem, the others still didn't even understand Wiles' question and needed to understand it. Pompiri, Deline, and the others also frowned. Indeed, there was a problem here. It was small enough and hidden deep enough, but it posed a fatal threat to the entire argument. Wiles' ability to see this problem stemmed from his previous research on this subject and his intuitive sense of numbers. Everyone looked at Lin Xiao on the stage, noticing he was currently poring over his paper, his face expressionless. Although he didn't appear anxious, the crowd below knew he was facing a problem. Previously, when answering questions from others, Lin Xiao had simply glanced at the question and answered directly. But now, he had already been reading the paper for 10 seconds. The audience fell silent, a tacit agreement. No one wanted to interrupt Lin Xiao's train of thought. They too wanted to witness the birth of such a brilliant new theory. However, every theory faces challenges. Even if Wiles doesn't raise them today, others will sooner or later. If Lin Xiao can't provide an answer, then the formal group transformation method he had proudly named will vanish into thin air. Please vote. Please, fellow readers, send me a monthly vote. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 109. A wonderful answer, everyone's doubts. Can he answer it? A girl in the Chinese students group couldn't help but ask. I don't know, another girl shook her head. That's Professor Wiles, who proved Fermat's last theorem. A boy nearby couldn't help but say. The questions he asks must be very difficult. They were all worried about Lin Xiao, wondering if he could answer the question. Facing a professor of this caliber, they would have panicked, as if they were back in college thesis defenses, the professor pointing out problems with their paper and saying, I'm sorry, I'll pay more attention next time, and I'll definitely fix it next time. Furthermore, Lin Xiao was facing various world-renowned mathematicians and an audience of over 2,000 people. The thought of it all filled them with daunting fear. Stop talking. Let's look forward to your god Lin, a professor nearby, his brow stern, interrupted their conversation. They all paused, their words falling silent. Regardless, as Chinese people, they all hoped Lin Xiao would succeed. After all, if Lin Xiao's achievements were recognized, it would clearly be a source of pride for China. How could they not be delighted to have a compatriot, so young at that, shining on the world stage? They all calmed down and looked towards the stage. Meanwhile, Lin Xiao was still reading his paper. Almost a minute had passed. The silence was so intense that one could hear a pin drop. But then, suddenly, they saw the corners of Lin Xiao's mouth curl up slightly, and he smiled. A smile? Everyone was stunned. Could it be he'd seen something? Lin Xiao put down his paper and looked around. He quickly spotted a small blackboard in the corner and said to the staff, please help me pull it over. Thank you. The staff nodded and quickly went to help Lin Xiao pull it. As he pulled the blackboard, Lin Xiao looked back at Professor Wiles and bowed. Then he said, "You must be Professor Andrew Wiles, right? First of all, thank you very much for raising this question. It makes my presentation even more complete. I've also come across this question while writing this, but I've considered the underlying idea and found that I can prove that CLM, cap 1/2 is actually greater than or equal to S0, so this problem is solved. I was just trying to recall my steps, which took up a bit of your time." Wiles smiled and said, "It's okay. As long as you can prove it, I'm sure everyone will be willing to wait." Lin Xiao nodded. "So, thank you for pointing it out, too, haha. That's my duty as an audience member, to point out problems." Wiles waved his hand, then said, "Then I look forward to how you'll solve this problem." Okay, at this moment, the nearby blackboard had been pulled up to the stage. A staff member handed a blackboard marker to Lin Xiao. "Thank you." Lin Xiao nodded slightly, then took the blackboard marker and began to write out the formula on the small blackboard. From equations 10 and 11, C10 S0m is less than or equal to C9 Greek letter psi, S0, since PS0, 1 plus 1 slash P, is less than or equal to S0 K equals 1, 1 slash K. Observing Lin Xiao's calculations, Professor Wiles's face lit up with satisfaction. Clearly, after Lin Xiao's initial steps, he was certain that the problem had been solved. The others in the room, watching Lin Xiao's confident calculations, were amazed. He had actually solved it. Furthermore, judging by Lin Xiao's earlier conversation with Professor Wiles, it seemed as if he had already realized the problem. Most people, who hadn't even grasped the problem at first, were now completely lost for words. They had nothing more to say except to express their admiration. Earlier, Professor Pompili and the others, watching Lin Xiao's smooth demonstration, were equally impressed. "This young man, you can't use common sense to understand, Wiles. It seems your problem has been solved by someone else, too." Andrew Wiles shook his head and said, "Actually, I knew how to solve this problem from the beginning, so we can only say that we solved it together. Also, I also considered this problem at the time, and it has something to do with sheaves." Delin, a master of algebraic geometry, was all too familiar with the term. "Yes," Andrew Wiles nodded. "In the process of proving Fermat's last theorem." Stop. Next time you speak, please don't keep mentioning your proof of Fermat's last theorem. Delin was fed up. This guy had to bring up this matter in every sentence. "But I did prove Fermat's last theorem." Wiles spread his hands. "Delin, I also proved the wheel conjecture." "I didn't ask you to tell me." Delin, "Okay, go ahead, tell me." Wiles finally nodded in satisfaction and said, "When I was proving Fermat's last theorem, I did some research on this. Later, when I encountered another form of the problem this young man is solving, I had a suspicion that all functions can be converted into layers. All functions can be converted into layers." Delin frowned. After a brief thought, his brows suddenly raised. "It seems possible, yes, but it's just an intuition," Andrew Wiles said. "You can't even call it a conjecture." Delin shook his head. "It seems worth exploring later." "Well, let's see our presenter. His results are in," Wiles said with a smile. They looked up. Lin Xiao had already written the final steps on the blackboard, so Greek letter psi, S0, is less than or equal to 1 plus log 0, S0. To sum up, the proof proves that S0 is less than or equal to CLM, cap 1/2. Having written this, it was time for Lin Xiao to stop. The audience suddenly realized what he had done, and some couldn't help but applaud. This proof was truly brilliant, as Lin Xiao had actually applied knowledge from algebraic geometry to the problem, transforming it into a geometric solution. Although Lin Xiao's research on algebraic geometry wasn't in depth, he had read books on it before and had a thorough grasp of most of the basics. Therefore, using this mathematical dimension to solve the problem wasn't difficult for him. However, just when everyone expected him to turn around, they were surprised to find that Lin Xiao was looking at the process on the blackboard, seemingly lost in thought again. "Yanzu, please give me your monthly votes." Chapter 110, A New Conjecture, Lin's Conjecture. Seeing Lin Xiao's pen paused, his expression thoughtful, everyone wondered what he was thinking about. The applause quickly grew and died down. No one disturbed Lin Xiao, just as they hadn't interrupted him earlier when he was pondering Wiles's question. However, they noticed that this time, Lin Xiao seemed to be thinking even longer. What was going on? 1 minute passed, then 2. By this time, according to the timer, the lecture had already lasted a full hour. However, the staff nearby didn't bother him because Professor Wiena, the organizing committee chairman, was nearby, stopping him. Any brilliant idea is born in a flash. As an observer, all we can do is give these geniuses more time and trust them. Professor Wiena, who initially distrusted Lin Xiao, believing he was playing tricks, had changed his mind after hearing the lecture. A genius like him shouldn't be judged by common sense. And so, about 5 minutes passed. Everyone waited in silence. And then, finally, Lin Xiao began to move. He took out a pen and began writing on the blackboard. As his first few equations appeared, Wiles and Deline's gazes narrowed. Lin Xiao figured it out, too. What's he doing? Professor Sanik, standing nearby, couldn't help but ask. It's a layer. Deline stared intently at Lin Xiao's steps. Yes, that's it. This step, my goodness, he actually thought of such a transformation. It's a modular form? Incredible, even Professor Andrew Wiles murmured. Why didn't I think of that when I proved Fermat's last theorem? Deline ignored Wiles's reiteration of Fermat's last theorem. His mind was already following Lin Xiao's steps, calculating. He was completely lost in wonder. Lin Xiao, on the other hand, wrote only a simple 6 lines. At this point, he put down his pen and quietly glanced at the last few lines. Autop BT2, Cap. He let out a long sigh, then turned and faced the audience again. The audience either frowned, thinking about the steps on his blackboard, or looked confused, as if asking what happened, and some were already drowsy. However, Lin Xiao just smiled, looked back at Professor Wiles, and said, Professor Wiles, I have solved your problem, but yesterday, when I was listening to Professor Lahor's report on the geometry of the moduli space of curves, I thought about this problem again and came to a result that surprised me. As you can see, I converted Greek letter psi, S0, to this function layer through modular formalization. However, this is obviously a special case, therefore, I now have a guess. As long as we generalize this special case, that is, deduce that it can be established under the form of k equals 1, then any function can be converted to the form of a layer. We'll longed to find a Rosetta Stone between algebra and geometry. Now, his Rosetta Stone has become our geometric Langlands program. In the process of studying it, layers have become a wonderful way. If we can convert any function to layers, I believe that the gap in the geometric Langlands program will be bridged by us, although it is small but strong enough. This is my vision for the future. Well, the topic has gone a bit far. That's it. Does anyone have any questions? He glanced around the audience with a smile, but then thought of Professor Wiles and turned back. Oh, by the way, Professor Wiles, do you have any questions about my proof? Meanwhile, Professor Wiles had fallen silent. He stared quietly at the last 6 lines of equations on the blackboard, reflecting on what Lin Xiao had just said. He finally said, No, I'm very satisfied with your answer, thank you. Lin Xiao nodded. But just then, Wiles added, But, future Professor Lin, I think the conjecture you've proposed is even more compelling than this question. When I proved Fermat's, stop, Deline couldn't stand it. Wiles was dragging him down to his glory days at this crucial moment. It was like a novelist rambling on about a crucial point. So he interrupted Wiles, stood up directly, and said without using a microphone, The new conjecture you proposed has found a new direction for our algebraic geometry. In the past, we all thought that we could not naturally convert all functions into layers. Only certain functions allow us to do so. We all know that when functions are converted into layers, they carry a lot of information that cannot be expressed in the form of these functions, and this information will provide us with a lot of help. Most of the functions in the Langlands program can be converted into the form of layers, but there are still some that cannot be converted in this way. The conjecture you proposed will enable us to make a breakthrough in this part. This is definitely a very important proposal for modern algebraic geometry. It will open up the direction of our algebraic geometry and make greater contributions to unified mathematics. So, I would like to ask if you have any other thoughts on this issue. Lin Xiao looked at the professor. He didn't know who this person was, but he seemed very powerful. He shook his head and said, I'm sorry. As you can see, I only just derived this problem, and it's just a guess. Also, I haven't done much research in algebraic geometry, so if you ask me to solve it, I probably won't be able to, even if I had a brilliant way to prove it. There's not much space left on this blackboard, so forget it. Everyone laughed at Lin Xiao's words. Was this a tribute to Fermat? When Fermat proposed Fermat's last theorem, he wrote, "I am convinced I have discovered a wonderful proof, but unfortunately the space here is too small to write it down." Thus, this problem stumped the mathematician for over 350 years before it was finally proved by Wiles. Lin also smiled, without any regrets, and said, "Congratulations, young man. Today you have not only solved a problem that has stumped the mathematical community for more than 2,000 years, but also proposed the new goal for the algebraic geometry community, and this goal will probably be called Lin's conjecture in the future. On behalf of my teacher Gerthendik and Andre Weil, I would like to express my gratitude to you. Please give me your monthly vote." Chapter 111 The End of the Perfect Report, Seeking Monthly Tickets. As Lin spoke, the staff handed him a microphone, allowing everyone in the room to hear him. Suddenly, everyone in the room was once again stunned. A conjecture? A hypothesis? Lin Xiao had proposed a conjecture that could offer a new breakthrough for the geometric Langlands program? Even those who hadn't understood what he was saying were now stunned. What does it mean to contribute to mathematics? This is what it means to contribute. Lin Xiao's previous solution to the Mersenne prime problem and his proposed Lin group transformation method are outstanding contributions to mathematics. This method, first of all, provides a solution to many related problems. Who knows how many new results will be achieved in the future with the help of Lin group transformations. Many professors in the room were already deeply inspired and were preparing to return to review Lin Xiao's paper to explore future research directions. And now, Lin Xiao's new conjecture is an even greater contribution to the mathematical community. The emergence of any conjecture will add momentum to the mathematical community, just like the Riemann hypothesis. Its emergence has provided countless impetus to the development of mathematics. Although it remains unproven, there are already over 1,000 propositions based on its assumption. Once the hypothesis is proven, these propositions will be elevated to theorems. While Lin Xiao's conjecture may not be as significant as the Riemann hypothesis, attracting the attention of researchers from all fields of mathematics, it has nonetheless excited professors in geometry. If all functions can be represented as layers, it will bring immense benefits to their research. Those studying the Langlands program in geometry, in particular, grabbed their phones and took photos of Lin Xiao's writing on the blackboard, waiting to study it later. If they could deduce that the k=1 form holds true, it could be an achievement that will etch their fame for generations to come and leave a lasting legacy in the field of geometry. Everyone who learns this in the future will inevitably come to this conclusion, and their names will be remembered by everyone, including Lin Xiao's, of course. After all, once this conjecture is proven, it will become the Lin theorem. Of course, whether it can be successfully proven remains a question, but what if it's easy to prove? Since we're here, we can't just give it a try, right? Meanwhile, Lin Xiao, on the stage, was taken aback by Lin's words. A conjecture? Yes, it is indeed a conjecture. And it's named after his own surname. A smile broke out on his face. Sounds pretty cool, right? He then said modestly, "You're being polite. I merely proposed a conjecture. If you want to thank anyone, it should be the one who proves it in the future, haha. If no one asks the question, how can anyone solve it?" Lin shook his head. If Copernicus hadn't proposed that the world revolves around the sun, how could anyone have gone on to prove it? Mathematics has developed to its present state through the discovery and resolution of one problem after another. Hearing the old professor's words, Lin Xiao's face fell into deep thought. After a moment, he nodded and said, "I see." Seeing Lin Xiao nod, Lin smiled slightly and applauded again. His applause spurred the others to follow. Gradually, the entire audience erupted in applause. The applause continued for half a minute before finally fading. Professor Viana called over a staff member and said, "Guard this blackboard. No one is allowed to erase it. Take it directly back to MPA and put it on display." The staff member, of course, understood the chairman's intention. This conjecture was clearly of great importance. After all, it was a bridge conjecture, not simply a solution to a problem. For example, proving the Goldbach conjecture simply proved that all even numbers can be expressed as the sum of two prime numbers. What mattered was the new theory developed in the process of proving this problem. Proving this problem, which could be called the Lin's conjecture, could itself provide significant support for the study of other theories. The importance of the Lin's conjecture was evident. The blackboard on which Lin Xiao had personally written this conjecture might become a relic in the mathematical world, for everyone to admire. The staff member nodded and immediately fixed his gaze on the blackboard. Anyone who wanted to touch it later had to ask his permission first. Even Lin Xiao, who knew if he would just erase it without a care? Of course, Lin Xiao had no such thoughts. Since no one had any questions, his presentation concluded. He then bowed solemnly to everyone again and said, "Thank you all for coming here to listen to my talk. Finally, I would like to express my gratitude to Professor Bumpiri for his tremendous help in solving this problem." He nodded to Professor Bumpiri, who smiled back. The applause grew louder, and everyone, rather than rushing to leave, expressed their admiration for what could be described as a flawless presentation. This presentation will likely be unforgettable. It will also become one of the most influential presentations at this International Congress of Mathematicians. In the future, anyone looking up the history of the Lin conjecture will see that it was proposed in a presentation at the 2018 International Congress of Mathematicians. Lin Xiao also stepped down from the stage to thank Professor Bumpiri again. He then looked at the professor who had asked him the question and asked, "Are you Professor Deline?" Deline smiled and nodded, "Yes, Pierre Deline. Professor Bumpiri and I are colleagues." "Oh, I see," Lin Xiao nodded. No wonder he just mentioned Grothendieck as his teacher, and no wonder he was so excited. Grothendieck is the founder of modern algebraic geometry and a world-class mathematician himself. As one of Grothendieck's most prominent students, Deline's achievements in algebraic geometry are naturally quite significant. Take, for example, the wheel conjecture he proved, a crucial problem in algebraic geometry, as it proves the Riemann hypothesis on elliptic curves. Its proof also made a significant contribution to the development of the framework for algebraic geometry and number theory. Lin Xiao's conjecture is also of great importance to theoretical research in algebraic geometry, which is why Deline was so excited. This means that the algebraic geometry pioneered by his teacher has once again gained a significant research direction. Keep going, young man. I hope to see you more often in the future, Deline said, patting him on the shoulder with encouragement. Thank you, Professor, Lin Xiao said with a grateful smile. Monthly vote requested. Due to the lackluster response, I've decided to reduce the number of updates. Future updates will fluctuate between 6,000 and 10,000 words. Quality is more important. Chapter 112, Huge Impact, Lin's conjecture shocks the mathematical community. Afterward, Lin Xiao continued to meet several other renowned professors, including Professor Sarnak and Professor Wiles. This was his first time meeting Professor Sarnak, and he was deeply grateful for his comments on his paper. Professor Wiles, on the other hand, complained a bit about Deline interrupting him, but Lin Xiao also learned from the other professors that Professor Wiles had a catchphrase. When I proved Fermat's last theorem, Lin Xiao was both amused and confused by this, but it was understandable. After all, Wiles was the only person to receive a Fields Medal, so it was understandable that he would often bring it up. Wiles' pride in this achievement stemmed from his connection to Fermat's last theorem. He had been acquainted with it since he was 10 years old, and he had always dreamed of proving it. At the age of 41, he finally fulfilled his childhood dream. For anyone, such an achievement is a lifelong memory. As they chatted, several more people approached and initiated conversation with Lin Xiao. Two of them were Fields Medal winners from this year's International Congress of Mathematicians. Clearly, Lin Xiao's performance in today's presentation had made them eager to get to know him. The others watching them couldn't help but envy Lin Xiao. Normally, only one other person could converse so intimately with so many renowned figures. Whether Lin Xiao was still a prominent figure was another matter. But for all of them, Lin Xiao's age guaranteed him a high position in the academic world. As Professor Wiles had just said, Professor Lin of the future, perhaps he could even become a Fields Medal winner. In the middle of the audience, a dozen students watched Lin Xiao, chatting with other renowned mathematicians in the front row, as if they were looking at a deity. Did Master Lin propose a conjecture? An undergraduate asked blankly. Yes, it's a conjecture, and a very important one at that, another doctoral student nodded, his tone filled with disbelief. Algebraic geometry bridges the gap between algebra and geometry, and the modern algebraic geometry established by Grothendieck partially unified mathematics. And Lin's conjecture will take this unification a step further. This will completely connect functions and geometry. Listening to the senior's words, the others were stunned. Clearly, Not all of them studied algebraic geometry. I can only say it's amazing, a new conjecture. Lin just solved the Zhou conjecture and the distribution of Mersenne primes, and now he's come up with a new conjecture, even making Professor Deline thank him for proposing it. I wish I could be even 1/10 as good as Lin. Forget 1/10, 1/100th would be enough. Alice, is the gap between people really that big? They all sighed, especially considering Lin Xiao's age. He hadn't even started college yet. If he went to college again, he'd be like a max-level expert entering the novice village. He wondered how much pressure Lin Xiao's classmates would feel. The gap between people isn't big, but the gap between people and gods is huge, someone consoled. That's true. At this point, Dean Yuan called out, "All right, everyone, get ready to go." The students all responded and began packing their belongings. To show they were paying attention, almost everyone brought a notebook, but it was clear they hadn't taken down anything useful. Secretary General Gong Zhou then asked, "Shouldn't we wait for Lin Xiao?" "No need to wait. Judging from his condition, he'll probably have a drink with the professors later." Yuan pointed ahead and waved. "Those foreigners like that?" "Oh," Gong Zhou nodded, but still glanced ahead and said, "That's really worrying." Yuan was stunned and asked, "What are you worried about? What if Lin Xiao gets abducted abroad? It would be a loss for our domestic mathematics community. We've finally produced such a talented person." Yuan was silent for a moment, then shook his head. "We can't control such things." Guangzhou sighed upon hearing this. Indeed, everyone knew the general situation in China, but precisely because of the general situation, no one could change it. After all, people are free. For example, during the Soviet era, Soviet scientists who won the Nobel Prize were prohibited from accepting the award by the Soviet authorities. Of course, this could also be to protect their scientists, to prevent them from committing suicide by shooting themselves 8 times in the back after traveling abroad. But to outsiders, the government's decision to prevent people from accepting honors was clearly foolish, especially in modern times. Therefore, it was impossible for the country to demand that people return home. "We can only trust him for now." Yuan shook her head. "Even if he's been abroad for a while, just remember to come back. Who knows, he might go abroad again after he comes back." At this moment, Su Chen, standing next to her, remarked. Yuan smiled and said, "If they're willing to come back, it means their hearts are still in China. It also depends on whether the environment back home satisfies those who return." Hearing Su Chen's words, Yuan shook her head and said nothing more. "If you talk too much, walls will hear." Time passed quickly. Word of the report quickly spread. The final determination of the Mersenne prime distribution law brought a wave of emotion to those who had previously researched the topic. When they first began studying the problem, almost everyone had been troubled by the simple yet vexing 2p1 equation. Now, the problem had finally been resolved. For many, this was a resolution to a long-standing issue. For GIMPs, the Great Internet Mersenne Prime Search Project, the publication of this paper marked the end of their project. All they had to do now was input the theory from Lin Xiao's paper into a computer, which would then determine the numbers one by one. This eliminated the need for pure luck, giving them ample time to discover even larger Mersenne primes, including those that had slipped through the net. Within just a week, a previously unseen Mersenne prime was discovered, along with a second, larger Mersenne prime. This new prime, 2Cap825899933-1, has over 24.8 million digits, more than 1.6 million more than the original. The discovery of these 2 new Mersenne primes by GIMPs was a powerful validation of Lin Xiao's achievements. After all, the fact that he had discovered 2 new Mersenne primes in such a short period of time, without encountering any problems, was a clear sign of the validity of his theory. Of course, Lin Xiao's Lin group transformation method received widespread praise from the mathematicians present, who praised it as a valuable contribution to the Langlands program. Its application of modular form theory, in particular, was a revelation for many mathematicians. The highlight of the conference was, of course, the conjecture Lin Xiao proposed at the end. The news that all functions could be transformed into geometric layers spread rapidly throughout the mathematical community almost immediately after his presentation, causing a sensation. Algebraic geometry holds a prominent position in contemporary mathematics, especially since Grothendieck's founding of modern algebraic geometry. A look at the reasons for each Fields Medal winner reveals that nearly every year, a laureate receives the award for breakthroughs in algebraic geometry, such as this year's winner, Schultz. And there are a significant number of mathematicians studying algebraic geometry. Therefore, Lin Xiao's conjecture immediately excited everyone, as if they had glimpsed the direction of the future. So, those leading algebraic geometry researchers who hadn't attended the International Congress of Mathematicians immediately downloaded Lin Xiao's paper, along with a photo of his blackboard. They read Lin Xiao's paper to understand how he formulated the problem, and the essence of the problem, naturally, lay on that blackboard. These experts then began to work on the problem, with many even abandoning their tasks. However, after several days of intensive research, they realized the problem wasn't so easy to solve. They racked their brains to prove that the k=1 condition held, but none succeeded. However, despite their inability to prove it, they could simply use the k=1 form and substitute the result into the function they wanted to transform, converting it into a sheaf. Just as Lin Xiao predicted, they succeeded. They had successfully converted the function into a sheaf. However, since the theory hadn't been proven, even if they succeeded, there was no guarantee that the resulting sheaf would be the same as the original function. Who knew if its nature had changed? Take the Riemann shrinking tunnel, for example. Who can guarantee that after shrinking through it, the bear remains the same after shrinking? This requires proof. But regardless, people will simply assume it holds true and begin using the converted function. It's like the Riemann hypothesis, it was assumed to be true, and then other theories were developed. Over 1,000 theorems have emerged, but only with a successful proof of the Riemann hypothesis could these false theorems become true. It's precisely for this reason that mathematicians have given the Lin conjecture such high praise. Professor Delin, for example, was interviewed by a media outlet just a few days after the presentation. Vicomte Delin, what are your thoughts on the Lin conjecture? I must admit that the Lin conjecture has opened up new possibilities for algebraic geometry. I believe that within the next decade, research on this problem will become a mainstream topic in our field. Please vote. Please vote. Thanks to Altria Pandragon for the reward of 500 starting coins. Thanks to Kitty Xiangsha and BD for the reward of 200 starting coins. Thanks to Fantasy Beyond and 20220403124404398 for the reward of 100 starting coins. Chapter 113 Interview with Professor Delin. Oh? So you think no one will be able to solve this problem within 10 years? That's not the case. Delin smiled and gave a bigger number, 25 years. I think it will take at least 25 years. I also studied this problem a few days ago. It's not easy, it's very difficult. Why 25 years? Because the wheel conjecture was proposed in 1949, and I completed the proof in 1974, which is also 25 years. Then it seems that you think the difficulty of Lin's conjecture is no less than the wheel conjecture you proved. Haha, no one can explain the difficulty of a conjecture, but in terms of the importance of the conclusion, Lin's conjecture is probably not lower than the wheel conjecture. I see. Then let me ask you another question. What do you think of Lin Xiao? To evaluate Lin Xiao, well, to borrow a phrase from Professor Bumpiri, his mathematical talent should be able to go down in history in the mathematical community. Every time I think about the fact that he is only 18 years old, I can't help but be amazed. Probably even the mathematical geniuses in history that I can think of are probably only geniuses like Gauss, Euler, Riemann, etc. So I believe that as long as Lin Xiao can continue to study mathematics, he will reach an incredible level. At least I can't imagine it now. Then it seems that you have a very high evaluation of him. However, do you think that if he had continued to study in China, he could have developed to the level you said? Hearing this question, Delin frowned, glanced at the interviewer, and asked back, why not? Seeing that Delin was a little angry, the interviewer could only give up asking such malicious questions. Nevertheless, the interview was published, titled A Mathematical Genius Comparable to Gauss and Euler. This media outlet is quite well known in Europe and the United States, and many people, upon seeing the headline, were intrigued and, after reading it, impressed by Lin Xiao. At only 18, he could achieve such tremendous success in mathematics, arguably the world's most difficult discipline, a feat that would be admired by anyone. Major domestic media outlets, including those in China, jumped on the news, covering the International Congress of Mathematicians and lavishly promoting Lin Xiao, a young prodigy hailed by mathematicians who have won the Fields Medal, the Abel Prize, and the Wolf Prize. Quantra.com, Citizen Daily, and Huaking Daily, among others, all ran special reports. And on Weibo, the trending topic once again appeared in the top 5 searches. 18-year-old Chinese mathematician prodigy proposes important mathematical conjecture. Clicking on it, the article focused on Lin Xiao's 1-hour presentation at the International Congress of Mathematicians, briefly introduced Lin's conjecture, and quoted comments from numerous mathematical masters, including Delin. The high praise, along with the seemingly impressive titles these reviewers gave, stunned every netizen who saw it. The comments section exploded once again. I knew it was Lin Xiao again before I even clicked in, once in May, once in June, once in July, and now again in August. I declare that Lin Xiao is the only non-celebrity who can frequently trend on trending searches. This conjecture sounds so incredible. Come on, I don't even understand it. Everything Lin Xiao does is incredible. Everything he achieves is untouchable by mere mortals. Good boy. Where are those two everythings? Stop talking. I have to download Lin Xiao's paper from the official website of the International Congress of Mathematicians. A strong youth makes a strong country. Thumbs up, thumbs up. And just like that, with this nearly universal publicity, Lin Xiao's name became known to nearly everyone in the world. Even if his name would eventually be forgotten, it was still a major achievement for him. Of course, Lin Xiao didn't care about fame. Fame, for him, was a lowly pursuit. Solving one difficult problem after another, bringing him ever closer to the truth, was what truly delighted him. Besides that, he simply admired his handsomeness. Wow, I look so handsome when I'm giving a presentation. At that moment, in his hotel room, Lin Xiao was reading a news article online. Among the pictures was a photo of him standing on a stage, introducing the Lin conjecture to the world for the first time. The photo, with some filters applied, instantly heightened the mystique of an unsolved mathematical problem. In the picture, he was dressed in a suit, emphasizing his tall stature and a faint smile. Lin Xiao's satisfaction grew as he looked at it. He downloaded the picture, then thought for a moment before posting it to his QQ moments in Weibo, captioning, "Only handsomeness can't be wasted." Shortly after posting it, he received a barrage of notifications. QQ wasn't too crowded, and he didn't have many friends. They were just acquaintances and classmates. Weibo, however, was much more frenetic. He now had over 500,000 followers, and they weren't just fake fans, but real ones. So, every time he posted something, it immediately attracted countless reposts and replies, with his topic trending right there on the hot search list. Lin Xiao briefly scanned the replies and shook his head in disappointment. Why were they all praising him? Couldn't they just read his captions? These netizens were clueless. He closed Weibo, a look of boredom on his face. After a moment's thought, he opened his profile and took a quick look at his gains. His excellent performance in the presentation had, of course, earned him generous rewards. First, for delivering an academic presentation and perfectly answering everyone's questions, he received 100 math experience points and 2 truth points. And for proposing a new conjecture of significance within the mathematical community, he received 200 math experience points and 3 truth points. With a total of 300 experience points and 5 truth points, Lin Xiao's profile changed. Host, Lin Xiao, truth points. 32.2, Universal Truth Branch Level, Mathematics, Level 3, 546/1000, Chemistry, Level 0, 7/10, Physics, Level 0, 7/10, Biology, Level 0, 7/10, Materials Science, Level 0, 5/10, Informatics, Level 0, 5/10. I'm still a little over 400 experience points away from leveling up. He didn't know how much brain development Level 4 would provide. But the other subjects are all Level 0, so I'll have to find a way to level up later. He had originally planned to read books on other subjects during the 2+ month break after the college entrance exam to gain some experience, but he'd ended up being incredibly busy. However, after the International Congress of Mathematicians, he'd be mostly free, so he could finally settle in and study. Besides, the start of the semester at Beijing University was not far away. New students would report on August 30th. And by the time he returned home from the International Congress of Mathematicians, it would already be mid-August, meaning he would only be able to stay home for half a month. However, perhaps because he had been away from home for the past 2 months, Lin Xiao had become accustomed to the feeling of being alone. Furthermore, solitary research was something he preferred. With more people around, the comings and goings increased, and he might even have to attend frequent social events. For example, after attending the emo and returning home, Lin Xiao encountered this situation frequently. Even relatives he rarely contacted called to visit. He certainly didn't like this situation, or perhaps anyone interested in academic research didn't. Even when interacting with others, they preferred to interact with fellow researchers. As the poem Inscription on the Humble House says, there are great scholars among the conversation and laughter, and no unlearned people among the company. Being with like-minded people is naturally the best. Lin Xiao shook his head, letting go of these thoughts. Then he noticed that he had accumulated 32.2 truth points. He raised his eyebrows and suddenly asked, "System, how many truth points are needed to solve the Riemann hypothesis?" Based on the host's math level, 3,000 truth points are needed. Lin Xiao, excuse me, he had thought over 30 truth points would be plenty, but it seemed like that was just the beginning. I still have to keep working hard, he sighed, checked the time, and saw that a lecture he was interested in was about to begin, so he left the hotel. August 9th quickly arrived, and the International Congress of Mathematicians concluded successfully. While the conference had some hilarious incidents, such as the theft of the Fields Medal, it also left every attendee feeling unsatisfied. It wasn't just Lin Xiao's talk that was astonishing, the other speakers also brought novel perspectives that were deeply beneficial. However, Lin Xiao's talk was still one of the most influential. Discussions on the Lin conjecture have already begun in many prestigious international mathematics forums, and papers on it are said to be searchable on Arxiv. However, time passed slowly, and the mathematicians who attended the meeting began to pack their bags, left Brazil, and returned to their own countries. Including Lin Xiao and his group, they also took a plane back to China. After returning to China, Lin Xiao was once again welcomed by all kinds of people as expected, and this time, he even heard words of flattery. Even after he returned home from Beijing, he could not avoid this kind of thing. However, as the saying goes, as long as the heart is strong enough, neither criticism nor these flattery will affect his nature. In this way, as time passed slowly, the end of August arrived, and the time for school to start also came. Please vote for me, please vote for me. Chapter 114 School has started, a dormitory worth over 5 million. August 30th, Shangjing. Even for Lin Xiao now, reporting to university was still necessary. Regardless of whether university meant anything to him, or whether he'd completed in 2 years or a year, he still had to obtain his degree and complete the necessary procedures. So, after landing from the plane, Lin Xiao pulled his suitcase and took a car to the entrance of Shangjing University. He'd been there before, so nothing was unfamiliar to him. However, the sight of the bustling admissions office filled Lin Xiao with emotion. While Shangjing University was the dream of every student nationwide, and everyone who managed to attend was considered a stellar academic, on the day of registration, seeing so many others attending the university, it felt like just another day. He shook his head, not dwelling on it, and walked in. The volunteer seniors warmly greeted each new student lugging their luggage. Similarly, there were also those advertising their services. For example, those applying for campus cards were incredibly attentive, offering to help with luggage. But when they heard someone already had a card, their faces suddenly fell. They say university is a small society, and it really is. Lin Xiao found it amusing, and a smile crossed his face. Just then, a senior student approached and guided him to the registration desk for the School of Mathematical Sciences. Please present your admission letter and ID card. The student union officer at the registration desk, presumably a senior student, smiled with a touch of sincerity at Lin Xiao's handsome face. Lin Xiao took out his admission letter and ID card and handed them over. The senior student flipped through the letter, a look of surprise on her face. She looked up at Lin Xiao and asked, "Are you the Lin Xiao?" Everyone around him couldn't help but look over. Although Lin Xiao had disappeared from trending searches for over 20 days, many people had still seen his pictures. Suddenly, a crowd of people grabbed their phones and started taking pictures of him. "Wow, Lin Shen, we've seen the real Lin Shen." Suddenly, a crowd gathered around him. This affected the other new students who wanted to register. "What's going on? I don't know. Is there a celebrity here?" Someone said impatiently. "I want to see who is so arrogant that he won't let people register. What contribution has he made to society? Does he think he's the Lin Shen?" As soon as he squeezed in and took a look, he immediately shouted, "Ah! Lin Shen! Lin Shen!" Lin Xiao inside was shocked. He didn't expect so many people to recognize him. He wasn't a celebrity. He was just a little better at studying and a little more handsome. What's the big deal? The students' union member who was in charge of registering him smiled and said, "Mr. Lin, welcome to Shangjing University. You've been famous around here for a long time," Lin Xiao said helplessly, "but I don't want to be famous." The member chuckled softly and completed Lin Xiao's registration. However, when she went to confirm a dormitory for Lin Xiao, she discovered that none had been assigned. "Huh? I don't see your dormitory information." "No," Lin Xiao was stunned. "Why? His class was in mathematics class 1, so his dormitory should also be assigned to class 1, right?" Just then, a teacher from the registration office approached him and said with a smile, "Hello, Lin Xiao, welcome to Shangjing University. Our department would like to hear your thoughts on your other arrangements, so some things haven't been finalized yet. Come with me now, and the department head and others will discuss this with you." Hearing this, Lin Xiao nodded. He had indeed discussed this matter with him before, and they would discuss it after he registered. "So are we going now?" "Yes, we'll go now." The teacher then took Lin Xiao away from the registration office. Everyone around them couldn't help but sigh in admiration at this scene. He was so impressive that even the university's admission to Beijing University had to specifically consult his opinion before making arrangements. For ordinary people like them, those who had only ranked in the top 50 in the province on the Gaokao, or even achieved the top scorer, they could only envy him, not jealousy. The gap was so wide that they couldn't feel jealousy anymore. Soon, Lin Xiao and the teacher arrived at the mathematics department building and held a meeting with the other mathematics department administrators, including Zhou Wu and, of course, the department head, Lu Cheng. Lu Cheng didn't waste any words and spoke directly. "Well, classmate Lin Xiao, first of all, welcome to the Department of Mathematics of Shangjing University to start your undergraduate career. Although you may not need to proceed step by step, it would be a pity in life if you don't experience the time of undergraduate study. Then let's talk about your future arrangements. First of all, it's the issue of your dormitory. If you like something lively, you can live with your classmates. Of course, there are double rooms to choose from. If you want something quieter and want to be alone, we can also provide you with a teacher's apartment with 2 bedrooms and a living room. In our school, only professors with senior titles can live there. You can decide which one you want." Although Lin Xiao was surprised that the other party directly took out a teacher's apartment for him to live in, he didn't act pretentiously and said directly, "Then let's go with the teacher's apartment. I like to be alone when I'm doing research." "Okay," Lu Cheng nodded with a smile, and then took out a key from the drawer. It seemed that he had prepared it long ago. Handing the key to Lin Xiao, he said, "You can ask Teacher Liu to take you there later. It's in Yanbi Garden. I also hope that in the future you will develop more great theories in this house." Giving it a commemorative significance, Lin Xiao smiled and said, "I'll try my best." Lu Cheng nodded, then said, "Then let's talk about your training plan. We previously decided to have you complete your undergraduate degree within 2 years, and you agreed to that. So, during these 2 years, you can consider whether you plan to study abroad for graduate school or stay in China. Although I'm reluctant to admit it, mathematical research abroad is indeed better than in China, especially for students like you." "Well, I'll think about it." "Well, think about it. Anyway, as long as you're interested, any university abroad will accept you. If you want to study in China, you should choose our school." "We hope so." "Yes," Lin Xiao nodded. "Let's stop here for now. We'll discuss your choice of undergraduate advisor later. What do you think?" "Okay," Lin Xiao naturally didn't mean to. "That's good." Lu Cheng smiled faintly, then stood up, extending his hand to Lin Xiao. "I wish you 2 wonderful years as an undergraduate at Shangjing University." "Thank you, Director Lu." Lin Xiao also stood up, shook Lu Cheng's hand, and thanked him. "Oh, by the way, regarding the rewards you were promised, I believe it was 2.5 million yuan, right? This should arrive between October and November, and you'll also receive a monthly stipend of 10,000 yuan. This will be disbursed starting on the 1st of each month. Just check your account. Disbursements will begin regularly starting on September 1st, the day after tomorrow." Lin Xiao's eyes lit up when Lu Cheng mentioned this crucial point. The reward from Shangjing University was the largest portion of all his awards, and now it was finally arriving. "I understand. Thank you, school. Also, there's a bonus for your presentation at the International Congress of Mathematicians, 150,000 yuan in total. I'll apply for that bonus later." and it should arrive along with the 2.5 million yuan. Just remember to check your balance then, haha. Don't be surprised how you only get 150,000 yuan for presenting at the International Congress of Mathematicians. Actually, the 2.5 million yuan was an exceptional bonus. Generally speaking, our school only gives 1 million yuan for publications published in journals like Nature or Science. For sub-journals, it's 500,000 yuan. For other top-tier journals, it depends on the situation. I understand, Lin Xiao nodded, unconcerned. The 2.5 million yuan was like an investment in him, so naturally, it was a larger investment. Okay, then, let's stop here for now. Teacher Liu, please take Lin Xiao to Yanbi Park, Lu Cheng said. Then, the teacher who had brought Lin Xiao here came up again, helped Lin Xiao pick up his suitcase, and then took him to the faculty apartment. As a result, when Lin Xiao followed Teacher Liu to the parking lot and was asked to get in the car, he was stunned. Teacher, we're going to your place, Yanbi Garden, outside the school. Lin Xiao, I thought it was inside the school. Teacher Liu shook his head. The dormitories in the school have been built for many years, and all kinds of public facilities are not in good condition. Our graduate student dormitory doesn't even have a water heater. Yanbi Garden is the closest faculty apartment to Peking University. You will know when you go there. You can walk more than 100 meters to the bus stop, and then take a bus for more than 10 minutes to get there. Buses 644, 686, and 688 are all fine. Okay, it seems I have to go to class earlier in the future. Lin Xiao was helpless. He thought he was inside the school, but he ended up outside. It would take more than 10 minutes to take the bus. Teacher Liu smiled and said, "Are you still worried about attending classes? You might have to ask to skip classes in a few days. Just think about it. When you go to class, you'll be overwhelmed by all the other people staring at you. And who knows, the teacher might not even be as good as you." Don't tell me I said that. That does make sense. Lin Xiao thought about it, and it seemed so. He had already taken all the math courses required for his undergraduate degree. If he were to go to class now, he'd probably be bored. Seeing that Lin Xiao seemed to have come to his senses, Teacher Liu smiled and said, "Also, don't worry about it. If you want to move to Yanbi Park, where you live in the dorms, everyone will be vying for it. Real estate in Yanbi Park is 88,000 yuan per square meter, and everything around here is more convenient than on campus. If taking the bus is too much trouble, you could buy an electric car, or get a driver's license and buy a car." Hearing the price of 88,000 yuan, Lin Xiao was shocked. Wow, that's so high? Moreover, his dormitory has 2 bedrooms and a living room, which should be at least 60 to 70 square meters, right? With this calculation, it is equivalent to Shangjing University directly preparing a house worth more than 5 million yuan for himself. Although he can only live there for 2 years, he can live there completely for free. The kind where water and electricity are all free. Otherwise, the monthly rent would probably be several thousand yuan. Thinking of this, his brows suddenly became serious. Teacher Liu, you are right, let's go now. Seeing Lin Xiao's expression, Teacher Liu smiled, and then without saying anything more, he took Lin Xiao directly to Yanbi Garden. P.S. Today's 3 chapters are all more than 3,000 words. Today's 3 chapters, each chapter is more than 3,000 words, and the update volume has not decreased. I said that reducing the update volume is to ensure quality. How did it become me threatening the readers? I will sue you for defamation. You defamed me. Yanzu, please ask for monthly tickets TT, it's too difficult. Chapter 115 Existence of Uniform Attractors for Supercubic Weakly Damped Wave Equations with Delay Term. Soon, with the help of Teacher Liu, Lin Xiao moved into his own house. The 2-bedroom, 1 living room apartment was spacious and comfortable for one person, even better than the dorm at Huazhong University of Science and Technology, where Lin Xiao had stayed during the emo training camp. The amenities surrounding Yanbi Park were also well equipped, making life relatively worry-free. Later, with Teacher Liu's help, Lin Xiao bought various daily necessities at a nearby mall, such as bedding, a toothbrush holder, and a toothbrush. After thanking Teacher Liu, she didn't stay long, leaving him a phone number for help, and then departed. Lin Xiao was left alone in the room. Looking at the house, he collapsed onto the sofa. He closed his eyes and took a few deep breaths. For the next 2 years, he would be living here peacefully. He hoped the future would be better. He quickly stood up, opened his suitcase, and pulled out Fundamentals of Materials Science, beginning to read. After returning from the International Congress of Mathematicians, Lin Xiao began studying other subjects. In the past few days, he had already finished reading physics, chemistry, biology, and fundamentals of mathematics. Each book had earned him 5 experience points and 0.5 truth points, and his grades in each subject had officially reached level 1. His brain development had also increased by a total of 0.2%. Once he finished his current materials science foundation, he would receive experience points related to materials science and 0.05% brain development. After that, he could continue to focus on his mathematics studies and also learn some physics. However, these matters would have to wait. The start of school naturally brought many things to do. First up was a class meeting. The students of Class 1, Department of Mathematics, Class of 2018, gathered to get acquainted. When Lin Xiao arrived, most of the students in the classroom were sitting with their roommates, while those who hadn't yet gotten to know their roommates were playing with their phones. But looking around, it was all men, not a single woman. Lin Xiao suddenly realized how lucky he was to have met a senior student during registration. Perhaps assigning that senior student to handle freshman registration was a way of protecting the mathematics department's image. It was truly heartbreaking and heartbreaking. However, Lin Xiao simply sighed, not taking it too seriously. What did it have to do with him? Women only slowed down my problem solving. Entering the classroom, he noticed none of his classmates seemed to notice him, so he quietly slipped in and sat in the back row. However, once he was seated and turned around, he was startled to see everyone's gaze fixed on him. My goodness! Are you looking at me like Schrödinger? You didn't even look at me when I came in, but now you're looking at me after I sit down. Naturally, the students started shouting enthusiastically. Master Lin is in our class, wow! Lin Xiao could only wave at them. Good, a few of them even came up to him and reminisced about the past. Since these students had participated in the National Mathematics Training Team, they naturally knew Lin Xiao. A short while later, several more people entered the classroom. Lin Xiao looked and saw that they were all old acquaintances. They were Yang Sheng, Sun Yu, and Li Boyun. They had all enrolled in the Department of Mathematics at Beijing University. They had previously suspected they would become classmates, and now, to their surprise, they had become classmates. Seeing Lin Xiao, they naturally ran up excitedly. Master Lin, we meet again. Master Lin, you're so awesome. How does it feel to show off at the International Congress of Mathematicians? Can that even be called showing off? Lin Xiao said irritably. That's called academic exchange. You're worthy of Master Lin. You don't even think that's showing off. It seems like that's commonplace for Master Lin. Lin Xiao, by the way, Master Lin, which dormitory do you live in? Sun Yu asked. The others were also puzzled by this question. Yes, where does Lin Xiao live now? I live off campus. The school arranged for me to live in the faculty apartments, Yanbi Garden. The others, sorry to bother you. Is this how a genius student is treated? They're clearly students, yet they're living in faculty housing, apparently even for free. Some people checked Yanbi Park and saw the price of 88,000 yuan per square meter, which immediately shocked them. Others live in homes worth millions, while they live in ordinary dormitories. Suddenly, they were filled with envy, nothing more than envious thoughts. Lin Xiao and the others continued chatting, and a moment later, a young-looking man, though noticeably more mature than the youngsters like Lin Xiao, walked in. This was their class counselor, Wang Wei, a PhD in mathematics from Peking University who had chosen to stay on campus as a teacher after graduation. Since they were all young, Wang Wei didn't engage in a lengthy speech. Instead, he spoke briefly and asked them to introduce themselves. When Lin Xiao went up to introduce himself, the students inevitably started to boo. Then they went on to discuss some matters concerning the start of the school year, such as military training. Hearing about it, Lin Xiao froze. He lives in Yanbi Park. Military training means he'll have to get up at 6 every morning. How is he going to do that? So, at the end of the class meeting, he went to Wang Wei to ask, "You live in Yanbi Park?" Upon hearing this, Wang Wei couldn't help but envy Lin Xiao's situation. Even as a counselor, he couldn't apply for housing in Yanbi Park and had to live on campus. However, in response to Lin Xiao's question, Wang Wei said, "Then you can stay with me during military training. I have 2 beds in my dorm, But I'll be living alone. I have spare quilts and sheets. Just take your toothbrush and other things. Lin Xiao couldn't help but cheer up at Wang Wei's suggestion. Thank you, Teacher Wang. No, it's my honor to help Master Lin. Don't call me Teacher Wang. Just call me Old Wang. Wang Wei smiled and waved his hand. Old Wang, or maybe I should call you our Wei, with a place to stay. Lin Xiao felt a little relieved and even felt in the mood for some jokes. That's all right. Calling me by my name is better. Why? I often see Oslo when I watch videos. You know how I feel. That's true. Afterwards, Lin Xiao ate and returned to Yanbi Garden, bringing some daily necessities and the materials science book to Wang Wei's dorm. However, Wang Wei was a counselor, and it was the beginning of the new semester, so he naturally didn't have much time to stay in the dorm. After making arrangements with Lin Xiao, he returned to work. Lin Xiao stayed in the counselor's dorm and took a quick look. The conditions were average. But they had a water heater, which was much better than the student dorms. So, he went straight to shower and planned to read Fundamentals of Materials Science for a while before going to bed. After all, military training started at 6 a.m., which meant he had to be up at 5:30 a.m. After showering, Lin Xiao returned to the table by his bed. There was a stack of draft paper with formulas on it. Lin Xiao guessed that it was left there by Wang Wei while he was working on a problem. After all, this was a double room with 2 desks, but Wang Wei was the only one there, so he could use them freely. However, Lin Xiao didn't bother looking at it, instead returning to his own book. He still had a little more to finish, and he figured he'd be done tonight, considering it was only a little before 8. Soon, after 10 o'clock, he put down his book. He finished it, and then he heard a voice from the system. Brain development has reached 3.65%, very close to the original 4%. However, breaking through 4% would be a bit more challenging. While reading books could gain experience points and raise other subjects to level 2, as things stood, he still had to read dozens of books to raise them all to level 2, which would take too much time, and he had other things to do. Let's take it one step at a time. Shaking his head, he stood up and stretched, his eyes suddenly catching sight of the scraps of paper on the table. Want to take a look? He was curious about what Counselor Wang Wei was researching. So he took it and took a quick look. Existence of uniform attractors for supercubic weakly damped wave equations with delay terms? Is that a title? Lin Xiao was stunned. This is a physics problem. But if Wang Wei was researching it, wouldn't it fall under the purview of mathematical physics? Mathematical physics seeks mathematical descriptions of physical phenomena, subsuming physical concepts into the realm of mathematics for solution. So, strictly speaking, it belongs in the realm of physics, not mathematics. Of course, since mathematical physics requires a high level of mathematical expertise, and since mathematics and physics are inseparable, the difference between the two isn't that great, and many mathematicians eventually choose to study physics. However, Lin Xiao's physics knowledge wasn't yet at the level where he could fully grasp these issues. For example, he had never encountered the weakly damped wave equation. Still, he held on to a modicum of physics interest and read from the beginning. I think I can understand a little bit. First, there was the topic of delay differential equations. Lin Xiao knew about them. After all, they were mathematical. They were a type of differential equation whose key characteristic was that the derivative of an unknown function at a certain time was determined by a function at a previous time. Lin Xiao had already grasped this concept when he first learned it. Furthermore, some unfamiliar terms would appear on his draft paper, but once these terms were translated into mathematical form, he suddenly understood their physical meaning. Mathematics is the language of the universe, capable of representing everything. Of course, this representation may seem abstract to others, but to Lin Xiao, it was anything but. Some physicists, like Edward Witten, who proposed M-theory, are able to directly see the intuitive images behind complex mathematical formulas and proofs. He was able to directly predict the results of a proof that mathematicians hadn't yet fully understood, and often accurately. For Lin Xiao, this was also how he understood the meaning of a physics term. If he wasn't sure, he simply looked it up online. And he often found his guesses to be correct. I got up late today, so I'm posting a little late. Please give me some monthly votes. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 116, Inferring the Physical Meaning from Mathematical Formulas. Does it end here? Lin Xiao leaned forward, reading and checking, until he finally reached the last page of his draft paper. The last page of the draft paper was left on an equation, perhaps because he had encountered a difficulty and stopped working on it. Existence of weak and strong uniform attractors in C1H0, Greek letter omega, Cl, Greek letter omega. So the goal is to prove the existence of uniform attractors. Lin Xiao stroked his chin, thinking. He suddenly realized that he seemed to have a solution for this equation. Although it was a physics problem, it had now been transformed into a mathematical problem, requiring a mathematical approach. Partial differential equations. Right. The Fedor-Galkin approximation should be applicable here. After a while, Lin Xiao came up with a solution. He took out his pen, tore off a new sheet of draft paper, and began writing according to his own ideas. Assume F satisfies equations 1.2 to 1.5, and Phi satisfies the assumptions. Initial value Greek letters I Greek letter tau equals Greek letter phi, E. So there exists a T0 such that the equation has a Shattuck-Struve solution. That should be enough. Lin Xiao nodded after confirming that there were no problems. However, he still had some questions if he went further. Partial differential equations like these are often studied for the existence of solutions. As for general solutions, there are no such things, so one can only analyze specific equations. In physics, there are many problems involving partial differential equations. For example, the famous NS equations are a type of partial differential equation, as are Maxwell's equations. At a deeper level, a deeper understanding of physics-related professional knowledge is required, and Lin Xiao didn't know how to proceed. Of course, a quick glance and a mathematical formula would be sufficient. So he continued with a simple mathematical deduction, which simply meant proving the existence of solutions to partial differential equations. He worked like this until around 11 o'clock, when the sound of a key turning in the lock came from outside. Wang Wei had returned. He looked tired, clearly exhausted from the start of the semester. After all, perhaps some students had problems they needed his help with, or perhaps there were administrative matters at the academy. However, he was surprised to see Lin Xiao still awake, bent over his desk, reading. No wonder he'd achieved such proficiency. Talent and hard work were both essential. Why aren't you asleep yet, Teacher Wang? Lin Xiao finally raised his head and greeted. He then checked the time and was stunned for a moment. It's already 11, Wang Wei, don't you even check the time when you study? I forgot, Lin Xiao said, putting down his pen and getting ready for bed. After all, the class had to gather at 6 o'clock the next morning. Of course, he didn't forget to say, oh, by the way, Teacher Wang, I just took a look at the draft paper you left on the table. Huh? Wang Wei was startled. He walked over and saw the draft paper on the table. Then, with a smile, he said, oh, this is something I was researching a while ago. Just take a look. I ran into some problems at the end, so I couldn't figure it out. I've given up now. It's about finding the existence of that uniform attractor, right? I saw that I can use an approximation to find it. The result satisfies Lipschitz continuity, and then we can figure it out. The rest of the process should also work. Lin Xiao, who had already sat on the bed, said this at the same time. Hearing this, Wang Wei was stunned. What? You mean, you know how to do it? You also study mathematical physics? That, not really. Then you understand it. I didn't understand it at first, but after reading it, I understand a little bit, Lin Xiao said. I looked at the formulas you wrote above and some of the text explanations, and then I roughly understand what they mean. It's basically deducing the physical meaning from the mathematical formulas. Wang Wei was stunned. Deducing the physical meaning from the mathematical formulas? Are you cheating? But could such a trick be pulled off? Finally, thinking back to Lin Xiao's story, he gave up the idea of reasoning with such a person. However, he was also curious about how Lin Xiao had solved the problem, so he picked up his draft paper and glanced at the book Fundamentals of Materials Science that Lin Xiao was reading. He couldn't help but be surprised. Lin Xiao was actually still studying the subject? You still want to study materials science, just to learn more? Lin Xiao lay on the bed and laughed. He couldn't explain that he was just trying to gain experience. Well, okay, Then you go to sleep. I'll just take a look. Wang Wei didn't think about it anymore. It would be difficult for ordinary people to understand what such a genius was trying to do. Then he returned to his desk, turned off the main lights first, so that Lin Xiao could sleep peacefully, and turned on the desk lamp on his desk. Although as a counselor, he had to get up early for the first day of military training tomorrow, he didn't need to train, so he still had time to rest. Soon, he flipped to the back of his draft paper and saw the difficulty he had encountered in the beginning. It was this point that finally made him give up on further research. Actually, this problem was one of the assignments his advisor had given him when he was still a doctoral student. His doctoral advisor was academician Tang Qing of the School of Mathematical Sciences at Peking University. Academician Tang Qing was renowned in both mathematics and mathematical physics, so Wang Wei followed him into the field of mathematical physics. However, when choosing a topic, Tang Qing told him that this problem was the most difficult of the assignments, leaving him to choose his own. He initially considered his abilities and abandoned it, opting for a simpler one. Although he has now graduated, he recently thought about this problem again and considered giving it a try. Unexpectedly, he ran into difficulties before he had even gotten very far, and ultimately had to give up. However, for such a difficult problem to solve, Lin Xiao, who told him he had no knowledge of mathematical physics, could still explain something that even he had struggled with before. He found it somewhat incomprehensible. However, when he opened Lin Xiao's draft paper and saw the steps at the end, he was stunned. Fedor-Galkin approximation? What kind of method is that? He suddenly realized he didn't know what the method was called. Perhaps it was from a related paper? Actually, Lin Xiao had learned about this method while attending a lecture at the International Congress of Mathematicians. He'd memorized the general theory, and when he looked at Wang Wei's problem just now, he'd thought of this method, so he derived it based on his previous impression and applied it to his problem. Of course, Wang Wei didn't know any of this. He could only admire Lin Xiao's knowledge. He also wanted to ask where the original paper came from, so he could learn more. But when he saw Lin Xiao was already asleep, he gave up. He then turned back to review Lin Xiao's steps. The Fedor-Galkin approximation, which approximated this difficult problem into an easily understandable form, suddenly made him understand. Then, Lin Xiao used the Lipschitz continuity, which he already knew. After 10 minutes, he had reviewed all of Lin Xiao's steps and put down his draft paper. He could only marvel, because from then on, as long as he followed Lin Xiao's steps up to that point, he could continue on with the project. While there was no guarantee there wouldn't be further problems, for now, Lin Xiao had already solved his biggest problem. With a wry smile, he muttered, "So, a student in my class is now my corresponding author." A corresponding author is generally the first author on a paper, the supervisor, or the project leader. This includes responsibility for the publication's credibility and, of course, guidance during the research process. Clearly, Lin Xiao was simply providing Wang Wei with guidance. Wang Wei was momentarily amused. Perhaps this was Lin Xiao's way of compensating him for living with him? If I succeed later, I'll have to reserve a second author position for Lin Xiao. He pondered this for a moment. Of course, the corresponding author position wasn't something he could just give away lightly, but with the help Lin Xiao had provided, second author status was a no-brainer. Wang Wei stopped dwelling on it, turned off the desk lamp, and prepared for bed. The next day, military training began as usual. While arduous, it was essential for every student. Lin Xiao found it bearable. Ever since he'd swallowed a health capsule, his health had improved dramatically. Military training, like it, was just a bit of a chore. The only thing that made the students uncomfortable was the scorching heat in Beijing that September. The heat of autumn had arrived, leaving most people complaining bitterly. Of course, there were some fun activities during the military training, which provided a chance for the students to relax and unwind. One day, they were even taken to a military training ground to try their hand at target shooting, a welcome perk of the Beijing University military training. However, time passed quickly, and after 15 days, the training concluded. Amidst the students' cheers, the tormenting days finally came to an end, and it was time for Lin Xiao to leave Wang Wei's dorm. Leaving, yes, Lin Xiao nodded, packing his toothbrush, cup, and other belongings into his backpack, preparing to carry them back to Yanbi Garden. Although he had gotten used to the atmosphere after living here for half a month, it was still Wang Wei's dorm, and if he really lived there, even if Wang Wei didn't say anything, he would undoubtedly complain. Besides, Lin Xiao felt it was a shame to leave his house, worth over 5 million yuan, unoccupied. Wang Wei stepped forward, helped Lin Xiao clean up, and said, "By the way, I'm planning to turn that problem into paper." "What problem?" Lin Xiao was stunned. "It's the mathematical physics problem I encountered the night before military training, the one about the weakly damped wave equation." Lin Xiao finally remembered and said with a smile, "That's great. Have you solved it yet?" "Not really." Wang Wei shook his head. "It's just a temporary plan. I'm still working on it, but I should be done in about 2 weeks. Which journal are you planning to publish it in?" "Mathematical Methods in the Applied Sciences, Section 2. "Sure," Lin Xiao nodded. Being published in Section 2 showed that the paper was quite valuable. "I'll put your name on the second author list when the time comes. I hope you don't mind." At this point, Wang Wei smiled again. "Monthly votes please." Chapter 117. Join the academicians' research group? Lin Xiao was stunned. "Ah, second author? I didn't do anything." Wang Wei, seeing Lin Xiao's expression, said, "Are you sure you didn't do anything? I just wrote a few steps on it back then. It shouldn't be a big deal." Wang Wei looked at him, speechless. "Teacher Wang. Old Wang. Wei, okay. Wang Wei sighed and said, "I finally understand what they say online about Master Lin. Please put away your magical powers. Please put away your magical powers." He had been stuck on that problem for a month, unable to figure it out. Then Lin Xiao took a quick look at it that night and figured it out. He even claimed he had never studied mathematical physics before. "Isn't that bullying? Forget it, I won't say any more. I'm definitely giving you this second authorship. Don't refuse me no matter what. I asked my former advisor the other day, and he said I have to give you a second authorship." Lin Xiao rubbed his nose and said, "Well, okay then." Wang Wei, with that look on his face, "Do you really think second authorship in a Zone 2 mathematics journal is valuable?" "But then I thought, Lin Xiao's first paper was published in a top-tier journal like the Annals of Mathematics, and his second was a 1-hour presentation at the International Congress of Mathematicians. It even proposed the new conjecture, and the related paper has been published as a conference paper. This kind of achievement is certainly on par with the Annals of Mathematics, right? Lin Xiao has published 2 papers, 2 top journals. Maybe they'll even look down on his meager Zone 2 paper." The more he thought about it, the more devastated he felt. Wang Wei bluntly said, "It's settled. You'd better leave." The counselor, "Feel less like a counselor when I'm with you." He quickened his pace, helping Lin Xiao pack his things. Seeing how slowly he was packing, he snatched the bag from his hands and continued to pack it up, asking, "Do you still want your military training uniform? If not, you can put it in the donation box later. We'll have to find a student dormitory, it's usually there these days." Lin Xiao then donate it. Watching Wang Wei packing so quickly, he couldn't help but wonder, is this how you send a second author these days? He hadn't said he didn't want it. Soon, the packing was complete. It wasn't much, actually, 2 changes of clothes in a book, nothing else. For the past 15 days, because the military training had been so packed with daily activities, Lin Xiao had barely learned anything. Then Wang Wei said he would take Lin Xiao to the school gate and find a clothing donation box to throw his military training uniform in. They got on Wang Wei's electric scooter and set off directly. Wang Wei said that he bought this scooter when he was studying for his master's degree at Peking University. After graduation, he stayed on campus to work, so he kept this scooter. It can be said that it has been used for several years. Soon, they arrived at the school gate. Wang Wei put Lin Xiao down and was about to say goodbye when he suddenly remembered something and said, "By the way, you should be more interested in mathematical physics, right?" Lin Xiao replied, "I am quite interested. I'm planning to study physics now, and I should also study mathematical physics." "That would be great." Wang Wei clapped his hands and continued to ask, "Are you interested in joining a research project on mathematical physics? With your mathematical ability, if you want to study mathematical physics, directly joining a research group to do some research can also help you get used to mathematical physics in advance." Lin Xiao thought about it and felt that it made sense, so he asked, "What is the topic?" "It's the topic my former doctoral supervisor applied for. My doctoral supervisor is called Tang Qing. He is already an academician. I don't know if you know him, but he now works at our International Center for Mathematical Research at Peking University. As for the topic being the Navier-Stokes equation, I study partial differential equations. My teacher also basically studies partial differential equations. There are only a few problems worth studying in this area. Navier-Stokes equation. Hearing the name, Lin Xiao immediately thought of that problem. Naturally, anyone in the mathematical community would think of the 7 millennium problems. Lin Xiao tentatively asked, "Isn't that problem?" Seeing Lin Xiao's expression, Wang Wei was at a loss for words. He knew exactly what that problem Lin Xiao was referring to. The existence and smoothness of solutions to the Navier-Stokes equations, one of the 2 problems in mathematical physics, were among the 7 millennium problems. This problem was a renowned name in mathematical physics, and along with the other 2, the Yang-Mills gauge field existence and the mass gap hypothesis, they stood like 2 crowns, waiting to be claimed by mathematical physics scholars. However, it was clear that these problems were not to be treated as such, and that solving them was not so easy. Until now, most people had avoided these 2 problems, with only a few daring to even attempt them. And Wang Wei's advisor clearly wasn't going to tackle them. He said, "What are you thinking about? It's definitely not this thing. It's probably related to 2-dimensional incompressible fluids. Let me think about it. The topic seems to be the global well-possedness of 2-dimensional incompressible elastic dynamics. Anyway, it's quite impressive. If you can do it, it will be at least a top article. My teacher has been studying this problem for a long time, so you can rest assured." Hearing the name of the topic, Lin Xiao's face showed confusion. What is it? What incompressible? The global well-possedness of 2-dimensional incompressible elastic dynamics is quite complicated if you have to say it, but you don't have to worry about how complicated it is. If you get in, you will at most be responsible for the mathematical calculation part. You can rest assured here, it won't be difficult, right? If it is difficult, it will definitely be difficult. But if you want to learn mathematical physics, it's a good thing to participate. My tutor originally wanted to ask me to join, but as you know, I am your counselor now, and I am very busy at the beginning of the school year, so I had to refuse. Then I saw that you are also interested in mathematical physics, so I asked you. Well, okay. Lin Xiao thought for a moment, and finally nodded in agreement. Just as Wang Wei had said, since he was interested in math and physics, he might as well give it a try. It would be a challenge for him, but for now, it seemed a bit too difficult. That's good. Wang Wei's face immediately broke into a smile. I'll tell my advisor your name later and ask for his approval. Don't worry, he'll definitely agree. Okay, Lin Xiao nodded. Perhaps because he had already decided to participate in this project, he was also serious about it. He said, then recommend me a few relevant books. It would be embarrassing if I didn't read anything at all. Of course, that's no problem. I'll send them to you later, Wang Wei said cheerfully with an okay gesture. Okay, thank you, Lin Xiao nodded, then said goodbye to Wang Wei and ran to the bus stop. There was no shade at the school gate, so he and Wang Wei talked under the scorching sun. It was really hot. Fortunately, the number 688 bus arrived just as he arrived at the bus stop. He boarded it and headed straight back to his luxurious dormitory. Back at the house, he collapsed onto the sofa and turned on the air conditioner. This weather is unbearable. After a moment's rest, he received a message from Wang Wei. My advisor has agreed. I'll send you his WeChat ID later. Just add him. He seems quite surprised you're joining the project. Lin Xiao raised an eyebrow and replied, okay, 1234. Wang Wei then sent a string of numbers, presumably academician Tang Qing's WeChat ID also. Since you're studying the Navier-Stokes equations, I recommend these books. First, books on fluid mechanics. For the Chinese version, read Fluid Mechanics. After reading them, you'll have a pretty good understanding of the Navier-Stokes equations. Of course, I'm talking about the physics of it. As for the mathematics, I'm afraid I'm not as thorough as you are. For the English version, read. Wang Wei then recommended a number of books to Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao took a look and decided he had some catching up to do. However, thinking about the research group he was about to join, he began to feel motivated again. After returning from the International Congress of Mathematicians, he had not been thinking about those difficult mathematical problems. At most, he would read papers in top mathematics journals, or see what those who are currently studying Lin's conjecture are discussing. His brain had rested for more than a month. Now it was time to start working again and get out of his comfort zone. I see, thank you. Well, these books can be found in the library. That's it for now. Come back to me if you have anything later. The final draft of the paper is due on the 22nd, and I haven't finished the first draft yet. So the amount of updates will really have to be reduced in the future. I hope you understand, but I will try to keep it at 8K words a day, and the minimum will not be less than 6K. Please give me a monthly ticket. Oh. Chapter 118 Mathematical Physics Group Meeting. After receiving a bunch of book lists from Wang Wei, Lin Xiao didn't rush to find them. Instead, he added Academician Tang Qing's wretched idea. Hello, Academician Tang, I'm Lin Xiao, he quickly replied. Hello, Lin, I've heard a lot about you, that's just fine. I still have a lot to learn from you seniors, let's not talk about that. There's no such thing as a first come, first served. Okay, enough with all that. Wang Wei said you were planning to join our project, right? What made you want to study physics? Actually, Wang Wei recommended me. Wang Wei is our class counselor, and I lived with him a while ago due to some circumstances. He knew I was interested in physics, so he recommended me to your group to try it out. Haha, I know. A few days ago, Wang Wei told me about the weakly damped wave equation problem you helped him solve. He said you hadn't learned the physics terms, but you could see the underlying physical meaning through the mathematical formulas. That should be it, that's fine. This shows you're quite talented in physics. Let's do this. Our research group is having a meeting next Friday at 3 p.m. Come to our International Center for Mathematical Research, room 511 on the 5th floor. You can get to know the rest of the group then. Okay, having confirmed his participation in this project, Lin Xiao began to study the relevant knowledge with peace of mind. To understand the Navier-Stokes equations, he naturally had to first learn fluid mechanics. Fluid mechanics holds a very high position in physics, and it can also be considered the only unsolved problem in classical physics. Fluid, naturally, refers to anything that moves. From the entire ocean to the morning dew on a leaf, all fall into the category of fluid. But fluids are obviously not limited to liquids like water. Even air, the flames from a rocket engine, and the asphalt on highways are fluids. Studying their classical mechanical properties has become a major problem that has captivated countless physicists. For example, how to improve the aerodynamic performance of flying and running vehicles, or how to make those that sail and swim quieter and faster, these are all areas that researchers need to address. Precisely for this reason, countless discoveries are kept secret in laboratories by various countries, forbidden from public release. After all, if these things were reframed, they could become how fighter jets can fly faster, missiles can be more accurate, warships can achieve better performance, and nuclear submarines can operate at greater speeds and quieter depths. These secret technologies, of course, will never be released. However, the project Lin Xiao participated in wasn't about military research, but rather purely theoretical research. Of course, these fundamental theories couldn't guarantee they wouldn't have an impact on practical applications, but that wasn't Lin Xiao's concern at the moment. He hadn't yet entered the application field. And so, time passed quickly. After military training, it was the weekend, so the freshmen, having just finished their training, enjoyed a brief 2-day break. Then, a new week began, and the freshmen attended their first university classes. For Lin Xiao, classes were essentially meaningless. Just look at what they were learning. The only thing that bothered him was the political science courses. The key was that they were worth 18 credits, and he couldn't even opt out. And he couldn't even request exemptions, even those basic courses weren't allowed. So, there was nothing he could do but study diligently. For example, they had a political science class on Tuesday. During that class, Lin Xiao felt drowsy for the first time in a long time, so he opted to just read. As for other professional courses, exemptions were available. At first, Lin Xiao felt like he had to attend a few classes to show his appreciation as a student. But after a class on mathematical analysis, he gave up. He knew everything the lectures covered, and it was just too boring. It was like taking a max-level character to the novice village to kill level 1 monsters. Though he could kill them with one blow, it was still a bit boring. So, without further ado, he applied for exemptions from all the courses he could. The instructors, seeing he was the one applying, generally approved him without a second thought. This meant he only had to attend classes like politics and physical education. This left him with plenty of free time, and his schedule was pretty much set. He'd wake up at 8 every morning, eat breakfast, arrive at school by 9, attend classes, eat, and spend the rest of his time in the library. Although he was a celebrity on campus, he was sometimes recognized, but since he was in the library, and since he was at Shangjing University, people wouldn't react with more than a smirk or a sneak peek, leaving him alone. This allowed him to study peacefully. He'd leave at 10 at night, arriving at the bus station just in time to catch the last bus back to Yanbi Park. After returning to his room, he'd continue reading if he had time, and if he felt tired, he'd wash up and go straight to bed. This was Lin Xiao's life these days. This pace might be unacceptable to others, but he'd already gotten used to it, and he'd definitely continue to do so. And so it was, Friday. The weekly group meeting for the project Global Well-Possedness of Two-Dimensional and Compressible Elastic Dynamics had begun. Lin Xiao duly arrived at the meeting's location, the Kyoto University International Center for Mathematical Research. He knew the Kyoto University International Center for Mathematical Research. He'd been there when he'd been interviewed by the Huaking Daily. It was near the shores of Weiming Lake, with a boy tower towering over it. Around him, he could see students sitting on the lawn, reading, and even couples whispering to each other. Lin Xiao didn't have time to take in the scenery of Weiming Lake, so he went straight into the research center and found room 511. Room 511 was already quite crowded. For a project this important, it was quite crowded. Of course, the main reason was that the project leader was an academician, as academician projects receive more funding. Lin Xiao had also learned a few days ago about the project's funding. 1.5 million yuan. This is clearly a very high budget for their basic mathematical theory research. After all, basic mathematical theory research doesn't require any equipment or resources. It can be conducted with just a few people, a few pens, and some draft paper. Some might wonder, where does the funding for basic theoretical research come from? This is something to explain. For other scientific research projects, such as experimental projects, the cost of conducting experiments can account for a significant portion of the total. However, when studying basic mathematical theory, it's different. Do you really want to buy chemical reagents? Perform mysterious rituals to communicate with the heavens, and then have the heavens tell you the answer? Those who oversee the use of funds would be foolish. Therefore, the bulk of their basic mathematics funding goes to paying salaries to other researchers in the group. It's obviously impossible for the funding applicant to pocket the funds directly. Once discovered, it would be considered embezzlement. However, this doesn't necessarily mean that participants in mathematics projects will receive more money. This is because there's a prerequisite: the project must be able to secure funding of sufficient magnitude. Generally speaking, it's difficult for a mathematics project to secure more than 600,000 yuan. For projects in other disciplines, the average funding is around 1 million yuan. Lin Xiao's project was able to secure 1.5 million yuan because the lead researcher was an academician. However, precisely because of the generous funding, even interns can earn thousands or even tens of thousands per month. With the addition of 1 or 2 exceptional professors, the project's funding is largely spent within a few months. Lin Xiao, you're here. When Lin Xiao entered, an elderly professor seated inside waved. Lin Xiao immediately recognized him, academician Tang Qing. Since he was joining this project, he had naturally researched Tang Qing's profile and learned what he looked like. Academician Tang, he smiled, nodded, and walked over. Seeing Lin Xiao approach, Tang Qing said to the others, "Come, let me introduce our new member, Lin Xiao, a rising star in our mathematics community." I've already told you about him. Everyone looked at Lin Xiao, including several graduate students, postdocs from the research center, and a professor from the same research group. They politely applauded and nodded. They had all heard from Tang Qing about Lin Xiao's joining, but most of them were still somewhat reluctant. While they couldn't help but admire Lin Xiao's achievements in mathematics, even his one-hour presentation at the International Congress of Mathematicians surpassed the previous achievements by a significant margin. These achievements were all in number theory. Even the important conjecture Lin Xiao proposed was in algebraic geometry, while their research topic was the NS equations and partial differential equations, which fell into the realm of mathematical physics. They hadn't heard of Lin Xiao's achievements in this area. Therefore, they basically don't think Lin Xiao can make much contribution to their research. After all, different fields are like different mountains, even though the problem they are studying is not much different from the field of mathematics. Please give me a monthly vote. Chapter 119: The Surprise Brought by Lin Xiao. After introducing Lin Xiao, Tang Qing introduced the others. First, Professor Xiao Chengqing from the Department of Physics. The younger members were Tang Qing's graduate students and postdocs. After a brief introduction, Tang Qing said, "All right, enough about the rest. Now that we're all here, let's get this group meeting started." Lin Xiao, have you ever held a group meeting before? No. Lin Xiao shook her head. Oh? Were all your previous achievements independently researched? Yes, that's impressive. Tang Qing nodded, and the others were a bit surprised. To have achieved such significant results through single-handed research was truly impressive. Since this is your first group meeting, just take a look. Oh, by the way, there's a project collaboration agreement for you to sign. It primarily addresses confidentiality regarding the research content. You should be aware of that. With that, Tang Qing pulled the agreement out of his briefcase and placed it in front of Lin Xiao. Naturally, Lin Xiao signed it without hesitation. The group meeting officially began. The research group meeting was to report on their progress, creating a PowerPoint presentation to share with the other members, informing them of their findings and preventing any slacking off. So, first up came a few young people to share their work from the previous week. After all, they weren't as knowledgeable as their advisors, and they generally couldn't offer much useful assistance on the main project areas. So, at most, they would share literature, providing useful information for their advisors and other more experienced and knowledgeable individuals. Lin Xiao listened to their presentations with considerable interest. Occasionally, he'd come across papers with titles that seemed high-level, like Zero Conditions for Quasi-Linear Wave Equations in Two-Dimensional Space and Global Existence of Nonlinear Elastic Waves. These papers could also provide assistance to their research projects. As they shared their work, Tang Qing and the other professor listened and discussed, and if something useful came to their attention, they would note it down. Soon, the graduate students' presentations concluded, and Tang Qing and the two professors began discussing the deeper aspects of the project. They stood in front of the blackboard, occasionally scribbling down equations as they engaged in discussion, while the other young people gathered around, listening and absorbing the insights their mentors shared. Tang Qing rubbed his chin, looking at an equation written on the blackboard in front of him. T plus R, he said, we need to estimate a weighted L2 generalized energy norm. Yes, Xiao Chengqing nodded. He wrote a few more lines based on Tang Qing's equation, then said, but there's obviously a problem here. We need to control the weighted generalized L2 energy based on the generalized energy N. Tang Qing suddenly grabbed a blackboard marker and wrote down an equation, RT, Then he said, then let's estimate the R-weighted null form of this thing. Xiao Chengqing took a look, his eyes lighting up. Tang Qing said, we can give it a try. Then, they began to work. Of course, they worked on scratch paper, as the blackboard was limited. Watching the three professors at work, several graduate students also pondered, trying to estimate the R-weighted null form. However, Lin Xiao stared at the equation on the blackboard. He had his own unique way of thinking about this mathematical subject. After a moment's reflection, he took up his pen and began writing on the scratch paper. Although he hadn't achieved any outstanding results in partial differential equations, his mathematical skills remained strong. No matter how things change, they still play with numbers and logic. This was especially true for Lin Xiao, whose brain development had reached 3.65%, approaching that of his sage state. Coupled with his math level reaching level 3, he now possessed an intuition for mathematics that was difficult for ordinary people to grasp. After writing down a few equations, he frowned and whispered, "This won't work." While everyone was contemplating the problem, his voice, though quiet, was still quite clear, and everyone else looked at him. "Won't work?" Tang Qing asked. Lin Xiao's words clearly rejected his proposal. He didn't get angry, though. Research was like that. If no one pointed out the errors, it was clearly abnormal. Only by constantly pointing out the errors could they achieve continuous success. Of course, pointing out the errors also required explaining the reasons. So, he waited for Lin Xiao to explain why this approach wasn't working. Tang Qing also said, "Tell me what you think, because R isn't in the app class of the zero-order Riesz operator with p equal to 2 in two-dimensional space." Lin Xiao directly stated the reason. Hearing Lin Xiao's words, Tang Qing and Xiao Chengqing were stunned. P equal to 2, Tang Qing muttered, then wrote something on his scratch paper. His eyes fixed. Yes, that's exactly what happened. So, we can't directly estimate the R-weighted null form? Xiao Chengqing nodded. After Lin Xiao's reminder, They immediately realized the problem. While it wasn't that they couldn't have discovered it, the problem was, if Lin Xiao hadn't pointed it out, who knows how much more time they would have spent on it. And yet, in less than 5 minutes, Lin Xiao had pointed out that this approach wasn't feasible, which made them truly impressed. Impressive? Tang Qing gave Lin Xiao a thumbs up. Wang Wei had introduced Lin Xiao to him, and he'd agreed because he saw Lin Xiao's potential and wanted to cultivate a relationship with him. He hadn't considered how much help Lin Xiao could provide. After all, everyone believed that Lin Xiao was destined for number theory. After all, he had already demonstrated such a strong talent in number theory, which was enough for a mathematician to study for a lifetime. Most famous mathematicians specialize in a single field throughout their lives. Hitting the jackpot here and there was a clear waste of talent. Even Tang Qing planned to wait for a while, waiting for Lin Xiao to waste time in their research group, before admonishing him to focus on one area. But now it seems they've underestimated him. His mathematical talent seems to be very helpful for their research on mathematical physics. Professor Xiao Chengqing also praised him. Not bad, you're truly a mathematical genius. As for the other graduate students and postdocs, they could only express their admiration. No matter what, he was a genius. Even if he didn't specialize in partial differential equations, even a basic understanding of them was beyond their comprehension. However, in response to the praise from the two seniors, Lin Xiao simply said modestly, "That's just the way it is. It's mainly because it's mathematical, which I understand. When it comes to physics, I really can't handle it, haha, don't be so self-deprecating." Tang Qing waved his hand and said, "Then it seems our previous direction was wrong. We need to think about it again." Xiao Chengqing nodded, and once again fell into deep thought. Although the previous direction was wrong, it was enough to change the direction of thinking. It wasn't a big deal. As long as it could be corrected in time, it would be fine. After all, the most frightening thing about research projects isn't encountering problems, but not having any. To achieve the ultimate goal, the intermediate steps need to be broken down into smaller problems, one after another, until the final step. But if you don't even know what the problem is, you're doomed. It's like not knowing which direction to apply your force. Just moments after they lowered their heads, Lin Xiao spoke again. "Let's try a different method to estimate it, huh?" The two professors, who had just lowered their heads, immediately looked up again. Could this Lin Xiao have come up with another method? Lin Xiao stepped forward and said, "Can I use a pen?" Here, Tang Qing handed Lin Xiao the chalkboard marker, eager to see what surprise Lin Xiao could bring him next. Taking the marker, Lin Xiao wrote an equation directly on the blackboard. Y. We don't need to estimate the previous one, we can just estimate this. Looking at Lin Xiao's writing, Tang Qing frowned. Continue, let's define this weighted L2 generalized energy as. With that, Lin Xiao began to write the following equation on the blackboard equals Greek letter alpha Greek letter kappa 2. As Lin Xiao wrote down line after line of formulas, the two professors' eyes became extremely serious. They watched Lin Xiao's calculations quietly while performing calculations with their hands. Tang Qing's graduate students could understand it at first, but they became more and more confused as time went on. What are they talking about? Did they study mathematics at Peking University for nothing? They wanted to ask something, but seeing that the two professors were listening attentively, and then looking at the several postdoctoral seniors next to them who were also thinking hard, they could only give up and ask later. In front of the blackboard, until Lin Xiao wrote down the last few lines of formulas, Tang Qing finally couldn't help but say, "Brilliant." Xiao Chengqing couldn't help but applaud. The mathematical method used by Lin Xiao directly and perfectly answered their questions. Now, with this key step from Lin Xiao, they have successfully estimated the L2 generalized energy norm. Please give me a monthly ticket. Chapter 120. The gap between mathematics and physics is not that big. Now, they could move on to the next stage of their research. Lin Xiao's move directly addressed their primary challenge. We've finally achieved a milestone. Now we can formally consider the case of two-dimensional nonlinear elastodynamic systems, Xiao Chengqing said excitedly. Yes, Tang Qing nodded. The two professors felt a sense of relief. Every step in this kind of research is challenging, and any breakthrough brings them great excitement. After all, it means they're getting closer to their goal. Then, over the next week, let's begin research on the next direction, Tang Qing nodded. For the next step, We'll primarily focus on establishing an incompressible elastodynamic system in Lagrangian coordinates and establishing its fundamental properties. Xiao Wang and Xiao Tang, you two will lead your junior colleagues in the literature search. If you have any questions, just come to me. Xiao Wang and Xiao Tang, the two postdocs, readily agreed upon hearing their advisor's words. Then Tang Qing looked at Lin Xiao again, and then said with a smile, "Since classmate Lin Xiao has joined our research group today, let's go have a meal together. It's a good opportunity to use up our funds." Lin Xiao nodded. "Then I'll obey your command." Tang Qing patted his shoulder with a smile and said, "You are still talking in a literary way. We don't need to be like this when we study mathematics. Oh, by the way, you are in our research group, and we can't let you down. We will pay you a salary of 30,000 every month until the day they solve the problem of the project. In addition, you don't have to save money when you go out to eat. Just bring the invoice after eating, and you will be reimbursed." Hearing Tang Qing's words, Lin Xiao couldn't help but be surprised. Just pay 30,000 a month? This isn't necessary. Hey, don't be polite. Just take it. I'm worried about how to spend our project funds. Just send me your bank account number later. Tang Qing agreed without hesitation. Then he said, "Okay, let's go now. Let's find a nearby roast duck restaurant. Have you ever had roast duck in Beijing?" "Yes, haha. Then let's go try the roast duck near Beijing University. I guarantee it's just as good as anywhere else." With that, Tang Qing grabbed Lin Xiao and took the others out for dinner. Originally, Tang Qing hadn't planned to treat Lin Xiao to a meal. Even if he was offering a salary, he'd initially planned to offer 8,000 yuan, the same as his graduate students, and 10,000 yuan for the postdocs. For the same reason, he hadn't initially expected Lin Xiao to be able to help with the project. But now, it seemed like Lin Xiao had truly surprised him with his mathematical methods. With just a casual demonstration today, he'd solved the problem they were facing. Although the problem Lin Xiao was solving was mathematical and had little to do with physics, they studied mathematical physics, and didn't they? So, if they could just translate the physics problem into mathematical form and then hand it off to Lin Xiao for help, how much time would they save? Tang Qing suddenly felt like he'd unearthed a treasure trove. Then, spending 30,000 yuan a month wouldn't be a big deal. Soon, they arrived at the roast duck restaurant and found a private room. There were 9 of them, so several plates of roast duck were served, along with other dishes. They didn't order any alcohol, since Lin Xiao didn't drink, so a few drinks would suffice. While Chinese academic circles aren't as pure as other circles, and drinking culture is equally prevalent, at a small gathering like theirs, drinking wasn't necessary. Soon, after eating and drinking to their heart's content, it was time to go home. "By the way, Lin Xiao, where do you live? Let me give you a ride." After they finished eating, Tang Qing's car pulled up. As an academician, he had a driver and secretary, so Lin Xiao had just come in his car. Lin Xiao didn't act pretentiously, saying, "Thank you for your help. I live in Yanbi Garden." "Haha, no problem. Yanbi Garden. I used to live there before I was an academician. After I was elected, I moved. I kind of miss it." It was so long ago. As they chatted, the two got back into the car. Tang Qing asked, "By the way, are you planning on pursuing a career in physics?" Lin Xiao said, "Mainly mathematics, but I'd also like to explore physics. Well, if I have any math or physics projects in the future, I'll come to you for help," Tang Qing said half-jokingly. "Of course," Lin Xiao didn't refuse. "Of course, I can learn from you, haha, it's settled then." Tang Qing clapped his hands and laughed heartily. "Of course, to be honest, you have a very good talent for mathematics. If you can really develop it in mathematical physics, you might be able to come up with something really good. I used to think that your research was in number theory, which might be a little different from our subject. But today, you have given me a huge surprise." Lin Xiao smiled and said, "Actually, I feel that the gap between mathematics and physics is not that big. As long as it can be expressed mathematically, it feels like there shouldn't be much difference." "Right, Tang Qing, not much? It seems that it is indeed a little different. But it's not that much different either." Lin Xiao went on, "But as of now, probably only some problems in physics can be expressed in mathematics." Tang Qing was too lazy to worry about whether there was a big difference between mathematics and physics, and said, "Haha, that's not necessarily true. Now we have computational chemistry, computational biology, computational materials science, etc. Aren't they all related to mathematics? Of course, I'm not saying this to ask you to go and study these things. And as for the mathematical physics I mentioned just now, if other people in our college knew that you gave up pure mathematics and came to study applied mathematics, I'm afraid they would cause trouble for me. That's not the case, is it? Lin Xiao couldn't help but open his mouth in surprise. That's quite serious. Tang Qing shook his head. Those who study mathematics look down on those who study other subjects, and those who study pure mathematics look down on those who study applied mathematics. Pure mathematics is indeed more difficult than other subjects, so they must think you should just focus on studying mathematics, like number theory or algebraic geometry. I've also heard about the famous Lin conjecture in our mathematics community recently. Hearing Tang Qing's words, Lin Xiao couldn't help but laugh. The disciplinary contempt hierarchy was truly a ridiculous thing. Of course, for him, applying what he learned was more important. Studying those more difficult pure mathematics problems was to challenge the limits of his intellect, and applying mathematics to other disciplines was to demonstrate the practical significance of his research. And so, the two chatted until the car arrived at the gate of Yanbi Garden. Academician Tang, I'll be going home then. Well, goodbye, Tang Qing waved and said with a smile, I wish you continued academic success, thank you. Please give me a monthly pass. Thanks to Xiao for the 2,000 starting coins. Thanks to Bai Zia Hangsing for the 500 starting coins. Thank you for your support. Chapter 121 Bourbaki Seminar. Some say university life is like a glass of plain water, bland and tasteless. However, for Lin Xiao, this same glass of water can truly enrich him. Uninterrupted each day, Lin Xiao immersed himself in a sea of knowledge, feeling the delight of a constantly enriched mind. As for the group meetings, they went on as usual on Friday of the second week, but this week's meeting emphasized the exploration of physical meaning. For example, the initial discussion of establishing an incompressible elastodynamic system, and the two professors clapped their hands, ultimately deciding something that Lin Xiao didn't understand. For example, the incompressible isotropic Hookean elastodynamic system. Lin Xiao did recognize the Hookean type, and Hooke, of course, was the person who proposed Hooke's law. He also knew the other terms, incompressible, isotropic, and so on, but when it came together, he lacked the relevant knowledge. Of course, Tang Qing didn't care. After all, he only needed Lin Xiao to be effective in mathematics. Besides, the project had a long timeline, and their class had only been running for a few months. The research cycle for a project was naturally very long, otherwise, how would they have the time to spend the funding? After the group meeting ended that day, Lin Xiao left the conference room and walked out of the research center. Just as he was about to go to the library, he suddenly received a call. Huh? Professor Suji calling. Professor Suji was also a mathematics professor at Shengjing University. Lin Xiao hadn't seen him in a long time. He answered the phone and said with a smile, Professor Su, Xiao Lin, you're enrolled now, right? Yes. Come to think of it, I haven't seen you in ages. Have you been away from school these days? Oh, I went to a math conference a while ago and just got back a few days ago. Where are you now? I'm at the Mathematics Research Center. I just came out and was on my way to the library, the International Mathematics Research Center. Yes. After hearing this, Suji was silent for a moment, then said in a somewhat serious tone, Come to my office now. I want to talk to you. Hearing Professor Suji's tone, Lin Xiao was startled. What was going on? But the phone had already ended, so he had no choice but to go to Suji's office. He soon arrived at the science building and found Suji's office. He had been there before and naturally remembered it. He knocked on the door, and a voice from inside called, Come in. Lin Xiao opened the door and entered, seeing Professor Suji sitting inside, along with several of his graduate students. Professor Su, seeing him approach, Suji stood up and beckoned Lin Xiao to sit on the sofa next to him. What do you want to talk to me about? His face was serious. Are you going to the research center to work on some project? Answer me honestly. If someone wants you for free labor, tell me who it is, and I'll give them a hard time. Don't worry about who the professor is. Peking University has its fair share of awful things going on. I usually don't bother to scold people like that, but if someone really wants you for something like that, I'll have a serious conversation with them. He had been so serious about asking Lin Xiao to come over because he was worried that other professors might be looking for him as free labor. Of course, this free labor probably meant brain power. After all, Everyone knew Lin Xiao was a math prodigy. Who knew some professor, whose own skills weren't up to par, would ask him to help with research. Besides, the International Research Center was primarily focused on research projects, so they certainly wouldn't hire an undergraduate student for no reason, let alone Lin Xiao. If any professor really did use their status to get Lin Xiao to help them with their research, he would absolutely curse them. Why exploit those postdocs? Why exploit Lin Xiao? That's not just harming them, it's harming the entire school. Hearing Suji's words, Lin Xiao felt a slight warmth in his heart, yet also a mixture of amusement and laughter. Hearing Suji's tone earlier, he'd thought something bad was going on. It turned out he was worried about this. So, he smiled and said, "Nothing like that, actually. It's Academician Tang Qing's project. I volunteered to participate. I'm a bit interested in physics." "Academician Tang? Oh, that's fine. I thought you were asked by those unqualified people who got in through connections." Hearing that it was Academician Tang who had asked Lin Xiao, Professor Suji felt relieved. Even if Academician Tang Qing had a project for Lin Xiao, he certainly wouldn't accuse him of exploiting free labor. After all, as an academician, he had no shortage of labor. Furthermore, Academician Tang Qing was quite kind to his people, so there was no need to worry about that kind of issue. As for Lin Xiao's research into mathematical physics, Suji didn't think it was a big deal. After all, he studied it himself, so he certainly didn't have any disciplinary bias. He then said with a smile, "Why are you interested in mathematical physics now? Is math no longer enough for you?" Hearing Professor Suji's question, Lin Xiao couldn't help but laugh. "That's impossible. There are still so many math problems I don't know. I've just developed a slight interest in physics, haha, I hope so. If math weren't so difficult, I wouldn't be studying mathematical physics." Suji sighed. Mathematics, the more complex the subject, the more difficult it becomes. When mathematicians find themselves plunging headfirst into the other world of pure mathematics, they often find it's inhospitable, so they choose to leave and enter the world of physics. There are many such people, and there are also many who have made great achievements in physics. We're all academic research, there's nothing different, Lin Xiao said with a smile. Haha, look, you've already answered 2 questions in the field of prime numbers, and now you're not considering exploring them further? The twin prime conjecture, the Goldbach conjecture, or something like that. Hearing about the Goldbach conjecture reminded Lin Xiao of a question he'd encountered in a math textbook as a child. Back then, he didn't even understand the question. He knew it was a 1 + 1 problem, but he didn't know why. He just thought, 1 + 1 = 2, right? Why did it need to be proven? Now, however, he has a deeper understanding of this kind of problem. "If I have the chance, I'll try," he said. Hearing Lin Xiao's words, Suji raised an eyebrow. He had an inexplicable feeling that Lin Xiao might succeed. Stopping the discussion, Suji casually asked, "By the way, are you guys going to choose a mentor soon?" Lin Xiao was startled, then suddenly remembered what had been said in the class group chat. It seemed like the mentor selection process was indeed underway. "Yes," he nodded. Suji said with a chuckle. "Which advisor are you planning to choose?" "We have so many options in the School of Mathematics." Suddenly remembering something, he added, "By the way, has Academician Tang told you anything about choosing an advisor?" "Not really." "That's good." Suji seemed relieved, and then, as if afraid Lin Xiao might misunderstand, he explained, "Academician Tang is currently focusing on mathematical physics. While you have some interest in mathematical physics, and I support that, you should still focus more on mathematics. Your talent shouldn't go to waste, so you should choose an advisor who focuses primarily on mathematics. For example, I plan to go to France next January to attend the Bourbaki seminar. Do you know the Bourbaki seminar? If you're willing to go, I can take you with me. Of course, you'll have to learn French beforehand, as they all discuss things in French." Lin Xiao raised an eyebrow at Suji's words. Why did Suji's words sound like a self-recommendation? However, compared to Suji's other discussions, Lin Xiao was more interested in the Bourbaki seminar. He had heard of it for a long time. The Bourbaki seminar was closely linked to the renowned Bourbaki School in mathematics. The Bourbaki School held an extremely important position in mathematics, and their contributions to the field were immense, providing a tremendous impetus for its development. Furthermore, the Bourbaki School's establishment in Paris, France, significantly contributed to Paris's emergence as a global center of mathematics. Even today, the economic strength of the United States has attracted many mathematicians to the city, particularly Princeton University, but France's status as a mecca for mathematicians remains unaffected. To this day, Paris remains the hub for the world's greatest mathematicians. The Bourbaki Seminar, founded in 1948 under the influence of the Bourbaki School, is a lecture-style event that continues to this day. It is not a class with a fixed membership, but rather invites members of the Bourbaki School and other renowned mathematicians, along with students, to Paris for discussions. This seminar format has also influenced various current seminars. It can be said that all current seminars were established under the influence of the Bourbaki Seminar. Lin Xiao asked curiously, "Is the Bourbaki Seminar held in January next year?" Hearing Lin Xiao's interest, Suji smiled and said, "Yes, in January next year. They usually hold 4 sessions each year, and there's one next month, but I plan to attend the January one. If you want to attend, just apply there, and they'll probably agree. But again, you need to learn French, otherwise you might not understand." Lin Xiao nodded. He was indeed interested in the seminar, but he still had to learn French first. Due to France's status in the mathematical community, many mathematicians are proficient in both French and English. "I'll think about it later." That's fine, of course. It's best to confirm it sooner rather than later, so you have time to learn French. Learning some everyday expressions and math in 3 months is still a bit stressful. Suji smiled and nodded, then asked, "What are your thoughts on choosing a mentor?" Hearing Suji bring up the topic of mentors again, Lin Xiao couldn't help but laugh, and at the same time, he was certain that the old professor wanted him to be his student. He smiled and said, "If you don't mind. I'd also like to study under you when the time comes." Monthly ticket request. Chapter 122 The Stray Cat Downstairs. Hearing Lin Xiao's words, Suji burst into laughter. "You said it, then I definitely won't refuse." The other graduate students in the office stared at their advisor in silence. "Goodness, your words were all about choose me, and then finally, you said it. Is that even necessary?" Of course, Suji didn't feel the slightest bit embarrassed. He patted Lin Xiao on the shoulder and said with a smile, "In that case, you're now my student. Of course, I won't assign you any tasks. Just research your own things. I won't interfere. If there are future projects, you can participate if you're interested. If not, I'll just put you on the list." For Suji, having Lin Xiao as a student was the best thing. He didn't have any demands from Lin Xiao. Of course, if Lin Xiao had questions for him, he would answer them, but only if they weren't world-class questions. At that level, he could only offer advice. Some students simply don't need much supervision from their advisors, and Lin Xiao was clearly one of them. Lin Xiao nodded and said with a smile, "Thank you, advisor." Hearing Lin Xiao's change of address, Suji laughed heartily and said, "It's my good fortune to be your advisor." Lin Xiao smiled. He didn't really have any requirements for choosing an advisor. When he first enrolled, the school allowed him to choose 3 advisors, but now he felt that choosing too many advisors was pointless. Choosing one would be enough. It would be better to focus on his own research. "So, what do you plan to research in the future?" Suji asked with considerable interest. As for research, Lin Xiao thought for a moment and said, "Let's finish Academician Tang's project first. Then, in my free time, I can work on the Goldbach conjecture. If I'm going to attend that seminar you mentioned next January, I need to produce some results of my own." "Well, that's up to you." Suji nodded. Although he was a little surprised that Lin Xiao had chosen such a difficult problem, it was Lin Xiao's choice after all, and Lin Xiao had the ability to make it. While there was no guarantee that Lin Xiao could solve such a world-class problem, even if he failed, it wouldn't matter much. After all, Lin Xiao was still so young. He chatted with Lin Xiao for a while, and then Lin Xiao left. He returned to Yanbi Garden and bought some snacks at a store outside, so he could eat them later if he got hungry while studying. He then returned to Yanbi Garden and arrived downstairs at his apartment. Just then, he saw a white shadow flash through the bushes in the nearby green belt. "What's that?" Lin Xiao was stunned. Could it be a stray cat? He walked forward, parted the bushes, and peered inside. Sure enough, he spotted a cat. It was a long-haired cat, primarily white with a chocolate reddish-brown coat. It looked a bit dingy, though, considering it was a stray, that was par for the course. The main attraction, however, was its face. Lin Xiao was stunned upon seeing it. "Holy crap, this cat is kind of pretty," he exclaimed. Its face was wedge-shaped, with a pair of crystal blue pupils set in it. These pupils were separated by a V-shaped patch of chocolate-colored fur, and beneath it was white fur. Its appearance was undoubtedly the cutest of any cat Lin Xiao had ever seen. However, the cat, hiding in the bushes, watched him warily, as if it might run away at any moment. In these days, would such a beautiful cat become a stray? Could it have an owner? Lin Xiao wondered, but then he thought, well, it's okay anyway, so he might as well play with the cat. He held out his hand and called, "Mimi? Mimi, come here." He hadn't held out much hope, but after a few calls, the cat actually let down its guard and took a few steps toward him. Seeing a promising opportunity, Lin Xiao called out a few more times, and the cat emerged from the bushes and slowly approached him. He crouched down slowly, trying not to startle the cat, then tentatively reached out his hand, finally succeeding in petting it. As he petted it, the cat meowed softly, a sound that easily brought a sense of pleasure. This cat isn't afraid of strangers, Lin Xiao thought to himself as he gently stroked the cat. There aren't many wild cats that aren't afraid of people, unless they've been tamed by humans, and then they lose their fear. The cat seemed to enjoy being petted, its eyes narrowing slightly, and it purred. It's said that cats purr when petted because they feel comfortable. But maybe because it's someone else's pet, it's not afraid, he couldn't help but speculate. Touching the cat's back, he gently pinched it and felt how thin it was. Maybe it doesn't eat enough every day. With this thought, Lin Xiao suddenly remembered a few sausages among the snacks he just bought. He wondered if a cat could eat them. He checked on his phone. It said yes, but not too much, as sausages are high in salt, making them difficult for cats to digest. But seeing the cat's expression, he pulled out one and poked a hole in it with his keychain, then peeled off the plastic wrap. While sausages weren't particularly appealing to cats, they were better than nothing. As he peeled back the plastic wrap, the feral cat, apparently sensing the sausages, immediately came over, meowing eagerly, clearly starving. "Don't worry, it's all yours." Lin Xiao smiled faintly and held the sausage out to the cat. The cat sniffed it, then took a bite and slowly began to eat. "You're so slow even when you're hungry." Lin Xiao shook his head, like a princess in distress. He looked at the cat and saw it had no testicles. While it wasn't ruled out that it had been raped, it was most likely a female. He watched the cat eat the sausage and stroked it. A while later, a girl passed by and saw Lin Xiao squatting there petting the cat. She exclaimed in surprise, "Wow! It's a ragdoll cat." She ran over, squatted nearby, and asked Lin Xiao, "Brother, is this your cat? Can I pet it?" Lin Xiao was stunned. He looked at the girl, who was wearing a school uniform and probably from a nearby middle school. She looked like she was only in high school or middle school. "It's not mine, it's a stray. You can pet it," he said, shaking his head. "Oh, it's not yours." The little girl's face lit up with surprise. The little girl said "oh," then turned her gaze back to the cat eating the sausage. She carefully reached out and petted it. Seeing her expression, Lin Xiao smiled and said, "Just pet it. This cat isn't afraid of people." "Yeah, I know. Ragdoll cats are very gentle," the little girl nodded. "A ragdoll?" Lin Xiao was stunned. "Yes, this cat is a ragdoll cat, the cutest kind of cat," Lin Xiao nodded. "So this is a purebred cat? No wonder it's so beautiful." Of course, there are beautiful cats in China, such as the Linking lion cat, and the ragdoll cat is one of the most famous cat breeds. However, Lin Xiao didn't know much about these things, as he hadn't previously understood cat breeds. The cat quickly finished its sausage, and Lin Xiao gave it one last rub on the cat's head before getting up. Seeing the little girl still full of interest in cats, he couldn't help but shake his head. Perhaps all little girls like these are so fond of cats? But he had already petted the cat, so he could confidently declare, "I'm not interested in cats. Go ahead, but be careful not to get scratched, or you'll need a shot." After warning the little girl, Lin Xiao turned and headed back toward the hallway, ready to go home. But he'd barely taken a few steps when the little girl called out, "Wow! Bro, the cat's following you." Startled, Lin Xiao turned to see the cat had actually followed him, its large, dark, furry tail twitching with a lively air. The ragdoll cat, seeing Lin Xiao turn his head, turned its slightly grubby little face, meowing, then walked over to his feet and rubbed against his leg. Lin Xiao was at a loss for words. "I gave you a sausage, and you're still clinging to me," He squatted down and petted it again. "Why are you following me? I'm not interested in you, you know," but the kitten clearly wasn't having any of it. It nuzzled his hand again, its soft, tender meowing sound instantly sending dopamine, endorphins, oxytocin, and other chemicals through Lin Xiao's brain. Electrical signals traveled through his vagus nerve, sending a wave of comfort through his body. The little girl came over and asked, "Brother, do you live here?" "I live here too. How about you take the cat home and raise it?" Lin Xiao said helplessly. "You can raise it at home. My grandparents won't let me," the little girl said dejectedly. Lin Xiao scratched his head, but he had to go to school every day. How could he have time for a cat? He looked down at the ragdoll cat again. It just clung to his lap, spinning around and around, and he was lost in thought. At that moment, the cat meowed again, instantly overcoming his anxiety. He simply squatted down and lifted the cat into his arms. To his surprise, the cat didn't resist even after he picked it up, as if it really was clinging to him. "Then I'll keep it for a few days. I'll ask if it's someone else's cat." "Great. Thanks, brother," the little girl immediately cheered up. "Can I come visit it later?" "That requires your grandparents' permission. If we find the cat's owner, I'll have to take it back." "Yes," the little girl nodded. "Thanks to my brother Dong for his 1,500 Kidian coins and to Gaokao Tavern for his 500 Kidian coins. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 123 on the role of cats in academic research. Lin Xiao carried the cat upstairs with a little girl. The little girl lived on the 7th floor, also the top floor. Yanbi Garden was a low-rise building, not one of those tall buildings. So, when Lin Xiao reached his own floor, he separated from the little girl, opened the door, and returned home. Then, Lin Xiao set the cat down on the floor. The cat, once inside, seemed completely at home, and immediately began to patrol its new territory, circling the house. Lin Xiao looked at it and shook his head helplessly. What kind of thing was this? Out for a walk, and back home, he found a little creature? Sometimes he found the world truly amazing. How could so many different creatures exist on Earth? Why do humans even have such a concept of cuteness and beauty? Even he had to admit, this cat was a bit adorable. But you, man? Why are you wandering around my house like it's your free will? Lin Xiao walked over, grabbed its front paws, and scooped it up, sitting on the sofa next to him. Rubbing its head, Lin Xiao said, "I just took pity on you, so I'm keeping you for a few days. Once we find your previous owner, you'll have to go back." Thinking of this, he immediately pulled out his phone and found Teacher Liu's contact information, asking him to help find out if anyone in Yanbi Park had lost a cat. He remembered the little girl's description of the cat as a ragdoll, so he did some online research and was surprised to find that cats like that typically cost over 10,000 yuan. It must have an owner, right? He thought to himself. If such an expensive cat were lost, wouldn't its owner be terribly worried? He could only hope to find its owner later. However, since he had to keep it for a few more days, shouldn't he buy it some food? A single serving of ham sausage would be enough, too much wouldn't be good. He also probably needed to take it to the vet for a checkup and a bath. The cat's fur was all tangled or matted together. Thinking of this, Lin Xiao felt helpless. This was truly a hassle. Forget it, I've already got it. I'll just bear with it for a few days and return it once I find its owner. Having made up his mind, Lin Xiao picked up the cat again, left the house, and took it to the nearest veterinary clinic. However, the veterinary clinic required a pet name for registration, so Lin Xiao thought for a moment and decided to just pick a name, Mimi, for easier recall. After all, every cat in China is called Mimi. An examination revealed ringworm, a common fungal infection in stray cats. The veterinarian said it was not a serious problem and simply treated it with some medication. Then it was time for a bath. The cat clearly disliked baths and meowed profusely during the bath. Strangely, it didn't stir around, it just meowed, looking both pitiful and adorable. Before the bath, the cat, while beautiful, looked a bit slovenly. After the grooming, it blossomed into new radiance that surprised even Lin Xiao. "So this is your true self," Lin Xiao sighed, stroking Mimi's head. Seeing the soft fur and perfectly shaped face, Lin Xiao couldn't help but lean in and sniff at it. The scent of shower gel made him exclaim, "Smells so good." Just then, a clerk from the nearby veterinary clinic approached. "Here's the cat food you ordered, along with a food bowl and 2 bowls, one for food, the other for water. Here's the cat litter and a litter box, and here's your cat bag." "Oh, sure, thank you," Lin Xiao replied. Seeing the pile of things, including the treatment and bathing fees, the total is 1,563.5 yuan. "How are you paying?" "We have a membership, too. Top up 2,000 yuan and get 200 yuan free. We're having a promotion right now. If you top up, we can give you a scratching post and 3 bottles of nutritional cream." Hearing the price, Lin Xiao was stunned. Holy crap, so expensive? The last time he'd spent 4 figures was on a computer and a phone, and now he'd spent over 1,000 just to get something for this cat? Seeing the smile on the veterinarian's face, he had no choice but to pull out his phone and pay. Of course, he didn't spend the 2,000 on the membership. He didn't know if the cat would ever find its owner again. If he couldn't use it after spending 2,000, wouldn't that be a loss? So, he stuffed Mimi into the cat bag, packed up his belongings, and headed home. Finally home. Arriving home, Lin Xiao let Mimi out, set the cat bowl on the table, poured in some cat food and water, and called the cat over. Seeing the food and drink, Mimi quickly dove in, seemingly enjoying the meal. Lin Xiao watched it eat, petting it, and said, "When your owner comes, you have to make him give me the over 1,000 yuan. If he doesn't, I won't give it back." He swore it was just about the money, not any interest in the cat. To prove his point, he stood up, walked into his bedroom, and sat down at his desk. He then turned on his computer and began reading papers related to their topic, shifting his attention from the cat to the papers before him. The initial deformation must be a small displacement relative to equilibrium, in this case a uniform expansion of the pre-stressed reference configuration. Alternatively, the nonlinear term must be a non-resonant or zero-energy condition. If we consider an incompressible elastic dynamic system, either of these assumptions could cause the solution to collapse in finite time. As Lin Xiao's thoughts progressed, he gradually became immersed. The power of the system made it easy for him to focus his attention. However, while diligently studying these papers, Lin Xiao encountered some problems. The zero-energy condition means that all nonlinear wave interactions along the characteristic cone are first-order cancellations. If I simply eliminate the nonlinear wave interactions between individual wave families, seems feasible? With this thought, Lin Xiao took out a pen and wrote out a few equations on a piece of paper. Although Lin Xiao realized he hadn't been able to contribute much after the second group meeting, after days of dedicated tutoring, he had a firm grasp of the topic and the relevant knowledge. This meant he could now contribute to the research from a physical perspective, rather than just from the mathematical side, as he had last week. He continued on, and after an unspecified amount of time, he suddenly encountered a problem. How do I decompose the elastic wave into its longitudinal and transverse components? This seems to involve a non-local Helmholtz boundary value problem. This is a bit tricky. Lin Xiao frowned, pondering the problem. But then, he suddenly noticed the cat running over, leaping onto the table and running over to his laptop. Suddenly, Lin Xiao snapped out of his immersion and, seeing the little creature, said with a mixture of laughter and tears, "What are you trying to do?" Mimi meowed and perched on his laptop keyboard again. Suddenly, the screen started flipping randomly, due to the key presses. Lin Xiao was startled to see that the paper he'd just been reading had vanished, replaced by new web pages. He quickly picked up Mimi and scooped her up. "What are you doing, you little tinkerer?" He patted her head gently, then turned back to his computer, about to clear the accidentally opened web pages. But then he froze at what he saw on the web page. Non-resonance in global existence of pre-stressed nonlinear elastic waves, abstract. Only resonant interactions along the characteristic cone affect the calculation, so an approximate local estimate can be used. Approximate local estimate. Lin Xiao's eyes suddenly lit up, and he quickly tried it out on his scratch paper. Mimi, beside him, seemed to understand he was busy, and laid down beside the table, her large, crystal blue eyes fixed on Lin Xiao. Lin Xiao ignored Mimi and stared at the formula he had derived. The zero-energy condition limits the growth of the stored energy function at the extreme value of the expansion strain, so the solved value is a bit too small. So we need to correct the zero-energy condition. Lin Xiao suddenly felt a sense of enlightenment. If he hadn't solved this problem, their research project would have been heading in the wrong direction, and they wouldn't even think to revisit it until they hit a wall. Moreover, this problem wasn't limited to their own research project, it was also extremely important for the research team working on related topics. He immediately looked at Mimi, who lay quietly beside him. If it weren't for this cat, who had randomly pointed him in the direction of the paper, he probably wouldn't have reached such a crucial conclusion. What a lifesaver! He immediately leaned in, buried his nose in Mimi's little head, and inhaled deeply. It smells so good, monthly vote requested. Chapter 124. Academician Tang was shocked. Professor Xiao was silent. You said the zero energy condition limits the growth of the energy storage function? How does that work? At an impromptu group meeting, Tang Qing and Xiao Chengqing looked at Lin Xiao with serious expressions. When they learned this news yesterday, they'd been incredulous, which was why they'd immediately convened this meeting today. If it were true as Lin Xiao said, then something big was afoot. Do you know what this means? Lin Xiao nodded and said, I know. It means the dominant behavior of the energy storage function for arbitrary expansion strain is determined by the propagation velocity in the medium. Upon hearing Lin Xiao's answer, Tang Qing and Xiao Chengqing both nodded. Indeed, this result, if verified, would be a major revelation to all those studying the Navier-Stokes equations. It would undoubtedly spark a sudden realization in countless other related research topics, and there were many people working on similar problems. At the same time, they couldn't help but wonder, how had Lin Xiao also figured out that this was related to the propagation velocity in the medium? Tang Qing asked, didn't you know nothing about physics before? Lin Xiao answered truthfully, I've been reading books and papers on the subject for the past 2 weeks, so I understand. This is incredible. Hearing Lin Xiao's words, the two professors were at a loss for words. Lin Xiao had actually gone to great lengths to study this subject. How long had it been? He could actually discern the underlying physics behind this? Could someone skilled in mathematics really be proficient in mathematical physics? Suddenly, Tang Qing remembered what Wang Wei had told him. Lin Xiao's ability to infer the underlying physics from mathematical formulas was quite rare in the mathematical physics community. Even Tang Qing couldn't achieve it. It seemed that Lin Xiao's demonstrated aptitude for physics was perhaps more than Wang Wei had suggested. Of course, these surprises aside, the most important thing now was to verify Lin Xiao's findings. Although this conclusion was truly astonishing, the mathematical physics community naturally adhered to the age-old tradition of mathematics. Only the most rigorous mathematical proof could establish the truth of a proposition. Without proof, everything is empty talk. No matter what, Lin Xiao, you must now provide a complete proof to convince us. Of course, Lin Xiao nodded and began writing the equation on the blackboard. Academician Tang and Professor Xiao sat down and studied the result carefully. No matter how shocking the conclusion was, mathematics would not deceive them. Although mathematics sometimes presents results that are truly incomprehensible, it ultimately conforms to the laws of the universe. Take, for example, the theory of parity non-conservation proposed by Chen Yang and Sung Dao Li. This new theory shattered the previously understood law of parity conservation, stating that the world is not parity conserved. In other words, when a particle is reflected in a mirror, the properties of the particle in its mirror image are not identical to those of the particle itself. This conclusion clearly defied everyone's understanding, so much so that even Pauli, the original proponent of the Pauli exclusion principle, believed it was impossible, despite the fact that its mathematical conclusions clearly demonstrated it. Later, a carefully designed physics experiment confirmed this result, shocking the world. This meant they had to find absolute left and right. If we ever establish contact with an alien civilization, as long as they also understand the law of parity non-conservation, we could use this method to determine whether we are on the left or right. Furthermore, the theory of relativity is also derived mathematically based on the premise of the constancy of the speed of light, such as the famous mass-energy equation. This is why mathematics is the language of the universe. As long as the process is correct, the results are always correct. As Lin Xiao listed line after line of equations, the two professors, initially in awe, suddenly understood. They gradually grasped the meaning behind each line of equations. Several other graduate students and postdocs from the research group were also present. Looking at the equations Lin Xiao had written, they were once again bewildered. One graduate student quietly asked a postdoc, "Senior, do you know what Master Lin wrote?" "I don't know," the postdoc said bewilderedly, while another one shook his head, clearly also confused. Several graduate students were immediately frustrated. My goodness! Even the two postdocs couldn't understand it this time. Remember, in the previous group meeting, when Lin Xiao was writing, the two postdocs were still able to keep up through diligent thinking, but now they couldn't. They felt like crying. Why is this so hard? Ux plus Ux, VM. Finally, after Lin Xiao had almost filled the blackboard, he arrived at the final formula. Thus, through these complex variations, it's clear that our zero-energy condition leads to a restriction in the energy storage function. This, in turn, indicates that the propagation velocity of the medium, as an independent variable, plays a major role. Seeing this conclusion, the two professors unequivocally accepted Lin Xiao's reasoning. This result was undoubtedly worthy of being published as a major success and would also provide significant support for their research. However, there was a dilemma. They had to wait for Lin Xiao's results to be published before they could cite them, unless Lin Xiao included them in their paper. But could they say that? Obviously not. Saying it would make them seem like they were trying to get something for free. The relative importance of Lin Xiao's work versus their final result was another matter. Unless Lin Xiao was made the first author. But if Lin Xiao was made the first author, then academician Tang, the project applicant, would clearly be in an even more awkward position. Of course, this kind of thing could be discussed later. For now, let's just express our admiration. Tang Qing applauded and praised. Excellent, Lin Xiao. You've achieved another outstanding result. Xiao Chengqing also applauded, but with a wry smile on his face. Lin, are you really only studying mathematical physics for 2 weeks? Lin Xiao said shyly. It seems, maybe 3 weeks? I spent about a week studying general physics before that. Everyone, how the hell can general physics even be considered mathematical physics? Physics undergraduates don't even study this book. At most, those in science and engineering who aren't majoring in physics do. Alright, stop attacking me. Retract your supernatural powers. Xiao Chengqing flung his hands and slumped back in his chair. Bu Xiangwen. Anyone good at math is a freak. Seeing academician Tang and Professor Xiao from the School of Physics acting this way, the other 6 young people knew what remarkable achievement Lin Xiao had made. Academician Tang Qing's words made them realize just how remarkable this achievement was. Please organize your results and publish them in AML. Your process and conclusions are perfect for this journal. Upon hearing academician Tang's words, the young people were stunned. As applied mathematics students, they knew what AML was. Applied Mathematics Letters, the Journal of Applied Mathematics, boasted an impact factor of 3.5 in 2018, making it one of the top journals in the field. The average impact factor of mathematics journals is very low because the impact factor is affected by citations. While there may seem to be a lot of people studying mathematics worldwide, compared to other disciplines, the number is far too small. This leads to very low impact factors, especially in pure mathematics. For example, the Annals of Mathematics, one of the 4 top journals in mathematics, had an impact factor of just over 4 in 2018. Applied Mathematics, on the other hand, has a relatively high impact factor, but applied mathematics here refers to the application of other practical technologies, such as finance. Mathematical physics also falls under the category of applied mathematics, but because it still involves basic theory, its citations are also not that high. AML has an impact factor of 3.5, which is already very high. Lin Xiao was also somewhat surprised by Tang Qing's suggestion. Can I publish it there? Of course, it's perfectly suitable, Tang Qing nodded. It primarily provides a quick publication channel for important but brief papers. Look, you've written a whole blackboard of formulas. While it looks a lot, if you typed it in Word, it probably wouldn't be many pages. And the review process is generally 2 to 3 weeks, which is quite fast. That's indeed quite suitable, Lin Xiao nodded. Regarding Tang Qing's suggestion, he wasn't confused about why he wanted to publish this paper separately. Although he didn't know the significance of his own paper due to his limited knowledge of mathematical physics, he knew that the results were quite significant and could definitely be published separately. Haha, and it's also very suitable for our research topic. Once you publish, we can cite your work. If the review time is too long, like the average 12 weeks for CPAM, that's simply too long, Tang Qing said with a smile. Okay, Lin Xiao nodded. Let's stop here for today, Tang Qing said with a sigh, looking at Xiao Chengqing. Chengqing, it seems we're one step closer to success, Xiao Chengqing. still leaning back in his chair, nodded. With Lin Xiao's achievement, they were indeed once again close to success. They had already prepared for a long-term endeavor. Mathematical research projects typically take a long time, from 6 months to 9 months to a year to 3 years. But who could have foreseen the sudden appearance of Lin Xiao, who would bring them so many surprises? Perhaps, they too would soon be able to complete their project. Chapter 125 Mathematical Black Hole. Leaving the International Mathematical Center once again, Lin Xiao found time to stroll along the shores of Weiming Lake. Although it was almost October, the sun still hung in the sky, signaling to the world that it was still scorching hot. The shimmering waves on the lake occasionally dazzled his eyes, and the occasional slight breeze and waves on the lake's surface also made Lin Xiao ponder, how do fluids move? For example, the Navier-Stokes equations describe the conservation of momentum for viscous, incompressible fluids. Whether it's air or water flow, the movement of these can be described and predicted using the Navier-Stokes equations. Clearly, they have provided immense research assistance in fluid mechanics. However, even so, people can only use them without truly understanding their secrets, the existence and smoothness of their solutions. It still shrouds them in mystery. Mathematics and physics are so difficult, Lin Xiao sighed, unaware that others, such as Professor Xiao Chengqing and the graduate students and postdocs, would probably complain again if they heard what he said. Returning his gaze to the natural world before him, Lin Xiao couldn't possibly grasp all the data from its appearance. That would require a quantum computer hidden within his mind, capable of analyzing every particle in the lake and simulating its motion. But it was clear that his mind consisted of only a mute system. "Hey, assistant, you haven't really helped me with anything," he grumbled, then suddenly thought of his cat. I think I forgot to check if there's any water left before I left. I better go back and check." He then turned and prepared to leave. But just then, a girl in a light blue JK outfit approached him. Her pale legs beneath her skirt had caught the attention of countless men. She was also very beautiful, her skin appearing soft and delicate in the sun. She approached Lin Xiao and asked with a smile, "Hello, Master Lin, can I ask you a question?" Lin Xiao was startled and turned to glance at the girl. Was she asking a question? He didn't think much of being recognized. There were so many people at Kyoto University who could recognize him. "Go ahead," he said directly, without refusing. "It's a functional analysis problem. Master Lin, you should be able to solve it easily, right?" The girl picked up a notebook, where a problem was written in elegant handwriting. If T is an unbounded closed operator on Banach space X, prove that the domain of T can only be dense in X at most. Lin Xiao took a quick look and gave the girl a strange look. "You're not from the mathematics department, are you?" "Huh? Yes. I'm in the mathematics department, class 2, my junior year," the girl replied, taken aback. Lin Xiao gave her a sympathetic look and said bluntly, "Proof by contradiction, if T is a closed operator defined on the entire space X, then since X is a closed set and also a Banach space, the closed graph theorem shows that T is a bounded closed operator from X to X. This contradicts the statement that T is an unbounded closed operator, and the original proposition holds." Upon hearing this, the girl's face lit up with admiration, and she applauded. "Wow! As expected of Master Lin, you figured it out so quickly." Lin Xiao shook his head. "Anyone in a math department should be able to figure it out quickly, right? You said you're in math, so you must have failed a lot of classes before, right?" the girl said. "Is that how you talk to people?" He's hitting them right off the bat. She had actually failed several classes. She forced a smile and said, "Master Lin, you can even guess that? You're amazing, no need to guess. Anyone who studies hard wouldn't be able to figure this out." Lin Xiao waved his hand. "Well, I wish you good luck. I hope you graduate successfully." And then he was about to leave. Seeing Lin Xiao about to leave, the girl quickly said, "Master Lin, since I'm so bad at math, could you help me with it?" Lin Xiao walked even faster. "No, I have to go back and take care of my cat. If you have any questions, you should ask the teacher." What a joke. She actually had to ask herself a question that could be solved with just one sentence. If she were to tutor him, she'd probably be paralyzed. Isn't this a math black hole? She actually came here to learn math. She needs to get away from him as soon as possible. Seeing Lin Xiao leave so callously, even mentioning taking care of the cat, she was momentarily in disbelief. Was taking care of the cat really that important? Or was she not dressed beautifully enough today? But watching Lin Xiao's receding figure, she began to doubt her own appearance for the first time. Returning to Yanbi Garden, Lin Xiao reached his door and was about to unlock it with his key. The sound of the key seemed to attract the small creatures inside, and then he heard a meow from inside. He quickened his pace and opened the door. Mimi was already crouching inside the doorway, looking up at him with her beautiful crystal blue eyes. Her pretty face was so inviting he couldn't help but want to touch it. Lin Xiao squatted down and picked her up. He had mastered the technique of holding a cat, one hand on her chest, the other on her bottom, and then he lifted her up. This way, the cat felt comfortable, and he could feel the cat's furry body against his chest. "Mimi, did you miss me?" He lowered his head, sniffed at Mimi's body, and then carried her into the bedroom. Her food bowl was in the bedroom. He checked and saw it was out of water, but there was still cat food. He added a little water and let Mimi drink. Then he sat down at his desk, turned on his computer, and began to organize his thesis, relationship between the energy storage function and the propagation velocity of the medium, abstract. This paper demonstrates that the dominant behavior of the energy storage function for arbitrary expansion strains is determined by the propagation velocity of the medium. Through the limiting effect of a type of zero-energy condition on the energy storage function, the paper wasn't long. As Tang Qing had said, it wouldn't take more than a few pages to complete. So he put it together quickly. Soon, he finished, then logged onto the AML website, found the submission method and formatting requirements, modified the formatting, and then looked at the submission procedures. Can I use Arxiv? Seeing the prompt, he thought for a moment and then went to Arxiv. Arxiv is a preprint site primarily for authors who haven't yet published their papers to share their work. It also serves as a way to secure a spot. After publishing their work, if someone else produces the same or similar results a few days later, they naturally can't publish it. Therefore, Arxiv can also be considered a form of copyright occupation. However, this has led to Arxiv being flooded with low-quality papers. For example, if a prominent figure predicts a future hot research area, others will rush to post a large number of low-quality papers on the platform. Later, serious researchers seeking publication will need to cite these papers, leading to widespread criticism from many scholars. Lin Xiao, however, didn't give it much thought. He quickly registered an account and uploaded his papers. Then, he began browsing the platform. Goldbach's conjecture. Suddenly, he noticed a paper titled On the Distribution of Prime Numbers. He glanced at the abstract and was immediately shocked. So the twin prime conjecture is true. So the Goldbach conjecture is true. Oh my goodness, isn't this another amateur scientist? He couldn't help but open it and take a look. Sure enough, it was riddled with errors and omissions. There are fakes on Arxiv too. He shook his head, then pondered the Goldbach conjecture again. He had previously become interested in the conjecture during a conversation with Professor Suji. As Professor Suji had said, the Goldbach conjecture is a problem in number theory and also a prime number problem. As someone who had solved both number theory and prime number problems, he was genuinely interested in such world-class problems. He took out a piece of scratch paper and a pen and wrote down the expression for the Goldbach conjecture, page 1 plus p2 equals m. This means that any even number greater than 2 can be expressed as the sum of two prime numbers. In a 1742 letter to Euler, Goldbach proposed that any integer greater than 2 can be expressed as the sum of three prime numbers. He asked Euler about this problem, but Euler was also puzzled and, in his reply, proposed what is now commonly known as the Goldbach conjecture, the Goldbach conjecture regarding even numbers mentioned above. Thus, this inadvertent question once again became a lingering question for every scholar in the mathematical community. It has outlasted Euler, outlasted Chen Jingren, and continues to this day. Of course, many achievements emerged along the way, such as Chen Jingren's proof of 1 plus 2 and the 2013 definitive proof of the weak Goldbach conjecture, which states that any odd number greater than 7 can be expressed as the sum of three odd prime numbers. However, the strong Goldbach conjecture requires even numbers, and this mere shifting parity has completely stalled mathematical research on it, and to date, no relevant results have been achieved. Lin Xiao briefly pondered the issue and ultimately decided to look for inspiration in other papers. He went straight to the 2013 paper proving the weak Goldbach conjecture and began reading. Time passed slowly. New York, USA. Editorial Office of the Journal of Applied Mathematics Express. Another paper has arrived. Let me see which country it's from, Editor Albert said. Seeing a pop-up message on the website's backend. "I'll bet $1 it's from China," another editor, Mike, replied with a smile. "Bingo. Congratulations, you won the bet. You can get your $1 back," Albert said with a smile. As the 8th-ranked journal among 265 in the field of applied mathematics, they also frequently receive submissions, with the largest number coming from China, likely because they place greater emphasis on speed and review. Then, he opened the paper. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.